What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and I'm here with Johnny. And Johnny.
Yes.
Just Johnny. For the podcast, the best gaming podcast, I think we're at 403. We're going to talk about Baldur's Gate. We're going to talk
Compact
about...
podcast today.
Compact
I was
podcast,
just traveling.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I told Silver I didn't know when this was going to start because I ended up having a meeting scheduled in the last couple days and sort of spaced until this morning. So I was just like, oh, damn, I got to do this. I got to do this meeting. So I didn't know what everybody's gaming schedule was. And I'm always a little nervous to like, I always feel like I'm putting people out, even though I know you guys like coming on and I like doing it, but it's like, just like, it might be 5 minutes late. Should we just not do it? It's such a weird thought process. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Fighting Dog, $2 super chat. Imagine Larian getting a hold of Star Wars or KOTOR. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Because we've both been playing a bunch of Baldur's Gate, or Baldur's Gape, as somebody called it. We've been playing some Telltales, which we beat. We're doing some Remnant 2, Remnant, as I used to call it, Remnant 2. We're going to talk about Starfield's future. I want to say thanks to everybody who showed up in the last couple days. Got 60,000 new subscribers. Absolutely appreciate it. Channel's been booming. And one of the major booms, I was telling people in the Discord, was the podcast. An old podcast caught on because it was Starfield discussion. And it got like 40,000 subscribers from a podcast. I was like, what is going on? People loving their Starfield, man. Starfield's like the future. Now that Baldur's Gate's out, right, people just move on. I'm just joking. They're just done. 500,000 people were playing that concurrently. Baldur's Gate. Did you see that?
Whoa, that's insane.
Second only in history to Hogwarts in total players playing it. That is
really
that's it. Baldur's Gate and Hogwarts. Those are the 1-2 punch of top Steam charts. Yeah. Congrats on 1 million subs. Thanks.
In recent years?
Ever, bro. Ever. Yeah. In 2 days, well, in 1 day, right? 2 days, you could say technically, right? I think of total playtime, 2 or 3. When did that come out for you guys? Friday?
The Baldurs or...
Yeah, Baldur's Gate. Yeah, when did that come out?
Baldurs came out yesterday.
Okay, so, dude, in 2 days, 500,000 people playing that game. And by the way, it deserves 1 million. Just saying it. Let's say it's been smashed. Somebody says, be sure to smash that thumbs up. Thank you very much. What's up, Ginger Prime? Make sure to check out his podcasts and his, he does a bunch of stuff, and his videos and his freakouts about Final Fantasy coming to the Xbox. I saw that just a couple days ago. I didn't realize he had tweeted me about it because I turned off Twitter DMs for a little while, or alerts, because I was reviewing Baldur's Gate. I was like, get away from me. Nobody talk to me.
I wonder if he has a video on the new expansion for Final Fantasy. Did you see they announced the new expansion for next year?
If it's something Final Fantasy, Ginger Prime's got a video on it.
So, yeah, he's got it.
Trust me. And it probably prior to even, I mean, I'm just guessing because I've never talked to him about it, but prior to most people knowing, he probably knows because he is like the Final Fantasy freak on the internet. The freak. What's up, everybody? Remnant 2 Game of the Year? ? Could be. Final Friday, so I can play BG3 all weekend. Should I buy Sekiro or Dark Souls 2? Good question. Sekiro or Dark Souls 2? We'll get some of these questions out of the way.
A weird question there. Very different games.
Come on, like Silver. Deflecting? Put your foot down. Put your foot down. Don't do that. Come on. I need your answer, Johnny. Come on. Put your foot down.
If you like deflecting, go Sekiro. If you hate deflecting, don't buy Sekiro, but also maybe don't buy Dark Souls 2. There are other better games. It's not a bad game. Maybe, there are other options out there.
You guys know me. I'll put my foot down, and I'm going to put my foot down right now for sure. Sekiro. Try Sekiro first. And the reason why is because if you can play Sekiro, you can play Dark Souls. But if you play Dark Souls and you jump into Sekiro, they do play distinctly differently, and Sekiro requires more when it comes to the back and forth of it. So I would say try Sekiro first. If you can dive into it. You could also do Dark Souls first as some kind of primer for Sekiro, but man, I know a lot of people that did not work for, where they were like, they're not. True. Yeah, they.
By the way, someone said that was a deflecting answer. I like
that.
Yeah,
it was, but that's all right. We've got one Silver style answer each podcast is how we'll end up doing it.
Also, on that topic though, do you remember when Neo came out? That was the experience I got. I was used to Dark Souls and those slower games. or like methodical reactive gameplay. You go into Neo, man, and you get smoked. Don't you?
I remember DMing everybody when I was doing Neo 2, and I was fighting that first guy. I was like, dude, what's up? I cannot defeat this guy. And it was 157 fights, and my wife was so mad. She was like, turn the music off. I'm so tired of hearing this guy announce himself. And I was like, it's time. We're going. I wasn't even mad. I was like, it was a good fight, but boy, was I getting smoked. I was just not doing it right. Let's see. Let's skip straight to Elden Ring. It's everything for, oh no, I wouldn't say skip. Personally, I wouldn't say skip to Elden Ring, because Dark Souls and Sekiro have a base construction that is easier appreciated. Not easier appreciated. I don't want to say that, but I think in reverse, you wouldn't appreciate Dark Souls and Sekiro as much if you did Elden Ring first.
I agree.
That's
and
me.
In a way, like DS3 is kind of pretty easy to parse.
Agreed. Yeah.
Compared, because Elden Ring, even though they have a lot of accessibility stuff, it's a bit overwhelming. Like, whoa, okay, there's so much going on. Takes you a while to.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, ACG? Love your stuff. Thank you very much. Died 130 times the first Neo 2 boss. Hal said, hey, Hal, what's going on, man? Hal's been around forever. Sorry. Yeah, Hal, dude, that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly who I'm talking about. And I was doing the review, and you couldn't hire souls. I was unconnected from the internet, so I was just by myself.
Yeah. You're on your own, man.
Yeah, I was just like
the guy with the balls, right? With the big
and I remember
balls.
telling you guys also on another game, Remnant 2. Where I was like, this is the hardest because they hadn't balanced it right there in the first reviewer patch, and I was just getting smoked, man. I was like, are my skills? Because you always hear the story when you get older, your skills go down. That may be true. I'm not saying I'm in reverse, but I do think that I look at experiences with prior games, you take them in, and so maybe you use a little experience instead of a fast reflex for something. Mm-hmm. So I've actually only gotten better. So this was the first time, those two games was where I was questioning myself. I'm like, this may be the end for old Karak.
Can I actually?
It's all Telltale games from here on. That's all I can review. It's game over. My skills are gone. Ginger Prime says, loving Remnant 2, by the way, been a real treat. Yeah, that game is, man, that game is just phenomenal.
Fun.
Like, yeah, if you guys get a chance, tweet out that we're live. Yes, we are going to try to be live from now on YouTube. You know, podcasts still negatively affect how people get alerts, but there's been so many videos prior to us going back live on YouTube that weren't going out to subscribers at all. We talked about it in the Discord all the time that I just said, screw it. There's nothing we can do. What's up, Kel? BG on controller's been really excellent. So let's dive into Baldur's Gate.
Bam.
First,
how many years, by the way, have we been waiting for to like have this game out and be able to talk about it?
That's true.
3, 4?
In chat, when was like the last time that Baldur's Gate, or the first time Baldur's Gate, we saw that trailer with the Illithid?
I think it was 2020, actually. Someone correct me in chat. Yeah.
Do you think it was 2020? It's so funny because I went back to my memory of going to an event in San Francisco to see it for the first time at a bar. And we all went to this event. I took Cadiz with me, and I think it was just him and I got to meet Delwraith, which is awesome. Like, that guy was that. So he, at that time, he was on Angry Joe, and, you know, they're a big channel. And we were doing fine, but it was like not that size. And I don't think he knew who I was. But the thing was that we just sat. It was hot, and so we sat in a little shadowy, you know, alcove over on the edge and talked for like half an hour. And he was just one of the most genuine, nice guys I've ever met. It was just awesome to talk to him. So looking back on Baldur's Gate, so I got to play this for not a great deal of time. We got to play it for a couple days prior to release. Listen to this, Johnny, because I test different. So one of the reasons why I didn't just beat it, which you probably could if you skipped audio, but I have 37 hours of just cutscenes recorded. 37 hours.
Oh my God. It's disgusting,
so to beat it for this review, you would have had to have, and by the way, that's all post early access. That's post early access locations. So to beat it, you would just skip the audio and get to the end. And I one of the things I wanted to do was see all the classes and what they did. And I got to tell you, dude, I don't know about you, that customization it's really simple. I felt there was a lot of choice, but one of the things I liked about Baldur's Gate 3 is you jump in and it's like race, and it tells you pretty clearly what you're going to get. Class, and it tells you pretty clearly what you're going to get. Background, and it tells you pretty clearly what you're going to get. Origin, is technically your starting. I actually felt like while it was easy to get, there was a lot of choice I made, because you also have subclasses, you also have sub races.
Yeah.
So
that's something I didn't even realize at first, because when you level up, you automatically get a subclass selected for you. I don't know if this is something you ran into, but I think level 3, you get a subclass selected. And I didn't realize at first that you can go in there and change it.
Gotcha.
And after that point, you can't really go back and change that unless you respec. Yeah. So it's just one thing to be aware of, that, you know, that is definitely something you have. And you can also go secondary class, which then means you have 2 classes, but you can only ever level up 1 at it. So when you level up, you have to choose 1, basically, right?
Yeah. By the way, anybody watching, tell your friends we're live. Stop work. Tell everybody at work. Stop in the middle of traffic. Tell everybody that we're doing the podcast. So here's the thing about Baldur's Gate, though, Johnny. You have your Dark Urge customization of a totally created character, and your Origins ones. Now, they had sort of gone out and said, Origins might not be the best character to start with. You might want to do a custom, or I've got a focus issue. Now I'm completely out of focus.
Yeah.
This is the same issue we had last time. So I chose Dark Urge. Did you choose Dark Urge?
Me too, because you can customize that one.
Yeah.
Why is that the only one you can customize? Isn't it interesting?
So that's because, a little bit like Dragon Age Origins, you have your couple starting characters. They wanted people to be able to have a starting character that still had a connection to the narrative, that was beyond fighter, orc, elf, and those persuasion choices, those discussion choices. So they chose Dark Urge, which is like connected but also disconnected enough that the player can choose and do their own. So I chose Dark Urge, and I just loved it, man. Dude, it's hilarious because it's so evil. You're like, Dark Urge in a lot of games, if it popped up, you'd be like, dark background. You'd be like, whatever. And the guy's like, it just wouldn't be that in depth. Here, it's like, all you can think about is the tortured souls that you've slayed prior. And I was like,
I love how, like, out of the blue it is. Sometimes I'm talking to a companion, and one of the lines is like picturing the delicious intestines of someone sliding out of there. Like, bro, what? We were talking about the quest. Like, what happened?
Right. Yeah, dude. I loved it too, because one time, it's just like the child in The Sixth Sense. One time you talk to somebody, it's like, I see dead people. And you're like, what? Why am I going to drop that in a conversation? Like, that's like a psychopath pretending to have empathy, and then they slip up and they're all, I see your body dead. It's great. And you're like, what? Wait, hang on.
You know what? I still think for the origin characters, you could just customize the appearance. Don't you think? Wouldn't it be fine for you to just like change how they look?
You could, but who knows if there's some writing that talks about your hair or talks about your look. And I don't want to spoil anything, but some things alter later in the game for sure. Yeah. That would be a lot of text. A lot of And speaking of text, you choose your character's voice, and then he never talks.
Never talks.
And I don't care if you like it or dislike it. The option would have been nice, because it sets you up. It's like, hey, which voice do you want, male or female? It's not a lot of choices, but you're like, okay, great. And then,
That's true. There is one thing I like about it, which is you don't run into the Mass Effect issue, which, like, you pick a line and what the character says is something different.
See,
than the line
that's not an issue to me. It's the greatest thing ever. But I do get what you're talking about. It's the greatest thing ever.
Sometimes it's even different.
It's rare that it's that different, but yeah, it can be different. But the reason why I like it is because it's just like L.A. Noire, where you're looking at a guy's face and it's like, guilty, and you're always wrong. But in Mass Effect, it was less wrong. It was almost always right. But there were times where you're like, I'm not quite sure that's what I was saying. I agree with you. But I love the surprise. I love being like, I hate you. And instead he's like, you know what? I really dislike you. Because sometimes I feel like the other choices I've made might have altered that vocal. And I just want to hear my character's voice talk so I can watch a cutscene as normal. Because they flash to your guy.
If you're hearing like a full-on conversation.
Even if you want to skip it, because you flash to the guy and he's like, my orc was just like the entire time in every cutscene.
You went with an orc?
Half orc, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what was
you never go full orc. That's just
never full orc. No.
You never.
What was your class?
I started out as a basic fighter because I knew you could adjust everything with the other characters. So I was like, okay, I don't. And that's one nice thing about Baldur's Gate. They say what class do you want to be. They're actually lying, because when you get into the game, you can switch anybody to anything. So it's like, you know. But I chose a generic fighter because I wanted to see how everybody else worked their stuff and then choose from there as a multi-class. So later, I went with a warlock. I mixed a warlock and fighter, and I got to tell you, there's so many synergies, so many amazing things you can do, so many secrets in that game too, so many. Sometimes just a pop-up where I love how it takes race into it. You'll be talking to somebody, you'll be like half orc, and you'll be all what? And you have a half orc one-liner, like that's very particular to orcs. That doesn't pop up because of intelligence. Doesn't pop up because of dexterity. It pops up because that's your race. And to me, not to be political, but that's how people talk right now, is race. You know, it does pop up. You know, he's my, you know, Korean friend. He's my whatever. So I like that it pops up. I'm going to do super chats here and then pop back into the discussion. The Iron Minotaur says, $10 super chat. Love your content, ACG, my go-to reviewer for any game before purchase. Insert random ACG intro speech about how Baldur's Gate can make you feel feelings that you didn't actually have. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Mike, $20 Canadian super chat. I spent some time choosing my character's voice in BG3, and yeah, he doesn't even talk. Yeah, dude. Oh, it kills me. It kills me.
You know what, dude? At first I thought, because I picked the Dragonborn, right?
Yeah, bad neck problems, but he's got breath weapons, man. Sweet.
But they look so damn cool, man.
They do.
I couldn't.
They do.
I spent a lot of time like trying to choose from his appearance because everything looked cool. Like the white stuff looked awesome. I ended up getting like a black dragon guy with like pinkish, like
accents,
fiery accents. Yeah, like purple eyes, like super fucking cool. And the thing is with him, with my guy, because he is a wizard, he also reads minds. I think it's because he's a wizard. So I thought, wait, does he not talk normally? And does he communicate telepathically?
Yeah, psychic.
I was actually thinking that for a bit, and then I realized, no, he does talk because in fights he says stuff.
That's actually a good thought process of like, oh, so maybe my guy's just psionic and can talk through his mind. You're Professor X. And you do this a lot too. I don't know if you noticed that.
He's like,
your character's always like, real quick, somebody was asking, ACG just got here. For someone that's newer to Baldur's Gate, is it noob friendly? Yes.
I would say so.
I would say so as well. Brala says, Jeremy, just curious, how come you don't go to in-person events like Gamescom? Would love to see more coverage. I used to, and I'll occasionally go, but with those events, they cost a ton of money because I pay for my own flights. I don't do company stuff. And a lot of the videos, not to be rude, but like I can watch a trailer and talk about a trailer and do fine on the video side. Going to see people is great, but also we had, a quarantine for 2 years. So I still go. I mean, the last one I went to was Watch Dogs Legion, which, yes, is a couple years old, but it's not like ancient times. And I went to that.
Yeah.
British orcs sound weird. I feel that they should have mute characters when you make custom characters because the voice may not match the face. Yeah. Or choose different voices. I mean, have more than two choices for voice. So everybody, this is the question I was going to ask. What race did you choose? If you've already said it, I apologize. Please say it again. I want to know what some people's choices have been. So Johnny, controller or mouse and keyboard?
Mouse and keyboard.
What do you think of the HUD?
At first, I was a bit overwhelmed, actually, because there are so many, when you compare it to Divinity, Original Sin,
right?
There's more going on. Because you have a whole set of things that are like bonus actions that you can do.
I know what you're saying.
Tossing something, jumping, And all of these are separate buttons, right, on your bar. And you have so many when you start off that I feel like it's a bit of a shock initially until you come to grips with everything, because you have your skills that, you have the slots, which are a limited use until you rest.
Mm-hmm.
To recover those, you have what they call the cantrips, which I didn't know what the hell that was, but it's skills you can use all the time. You have the bonus ones, and so initially was a bit hard to identify on the screen, like, okay, what can I actually still do in this turn?
Yeah.
For example, you have a circle around your end turn button, which indicates your action points to a certain extent, but only movement. So that actually only represents the movement you can make. But that's also combined with the bonus actions. So for example, if you jump, that the bar goes down there. But for example, you could use that entire movement bar and then still cast a spell at the end. So some of that wasn't really clear, and I had to just experiment with it. I don't know if maybe I missed the tutorial where they explained it, but yeah, took a little bit to.
I don't think you missed the tutorial. I think that they just have a little bit of an issue with how much data is on the screen because it's a D&D game. And so, like a magic user, for instance, those are the guys that have spell books. And I said in the review, it's like they need a wagon to carry the spell book at the end. And that's what that's not even all the available ones. That's just the ones and so it can become really cumbersome.
So that's kind of coming from D&D, the fact that there are so many spells and actions, like you can jump, you can do all this stuff. That's
it's I would say for me, I personally found the controller to maybe be a little bit more fun. I had a bug, and I still have a bug. Holding down is supposed to turn everybody to stealth, and it wouldn't work for me. So in my review, I was saying, hey, this might be one of the glitches, because they said, please don't review the game based on the controller because we have some problems with it. But I got to say, personally, dude, the radials can all be customized. So you can have a customization radial just for up-close spells, one for distance spells, one for medium spells. And you can just, and it's like a combo. So when you go into a battle and you see where a guy is, you're just like right twice on the trigger because you know that that's what you need to get to this particular group of spells. It worked so friggin' well, man. And also the mouse and keyboard and control with the scroll wheel, I found myself fighting a little bit more there than I did with the analog sticks on the controller.
Okay.
But I gotta say, man, it was infinitely better than I expected with a controller. I was stunned how well it worked because there is so much stuff. Here's also what it proves. That if you ever hear a company say, we're not doing controller because of blah, 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 it's like, well, we now have Pillars of Eternity 2, which had a console version. And we've got this, which I think indicate you probably can do it.
Final Fantasy 14.
Final Fantasy 14. Yeah. So reading some of these, people are saying a lot of people chose Dragonborn. The dragon guy is who I'm rocking. Ginger says, agree that it looks awkward when your guy just stands there. Elf, Dragonborn, half-elf, elf, human, thief, warlock, human, thief, warlock, orc. Chose a half-elf barbarian, dark urge, and subclass wildheart. Wood elf, rogue, monk, as well. Yeah, there's a lot of elves. There's a lot of elves.
It's funny how nobody's going human, right? Nobody wants the.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that humans are the milquetoast in D&D that are good for newbies who don't want to feel like they're choosing. But here's the thing with 5th edition, though, Johnny. The big problem I found later in Baldur's Gate, and it's not a problem as in I would ding it. It's a problem as in it's 5th edition rules. That yes, you can really min-max if you pick one thing, but everybody is good enough. And that's sort of the political climate of today. And they changed 5th edition in so many ways in that way that I see these characters and I'm like, I get it. You do get an extra bonus this. But it's like this guy who isn't what you are, but he's multi-classed and he's this human is very close to what you are. And I got to admit, I would have And I feel this way towards a lot of D&D games that do this. I feel that people are so nervous. Like, I don't know if you know, but it's like there's been this big hubbub about orcs. It's like, oh, it's, you know, racially insensitive because they were mimicking this. And I'm like, I don't know what to me, an orc is an orc, an elf is an elf, and they should reflect differences. Just like when you look around the world, you look at studies for weight or height, there are differences. I don't see that as a problem, but D&D's got really... They're getting really tentative about that. They're getting really nervous, very like dialed in. And you'll hear the same thing with Drow. I don't know if you know, but Drow initially were like these super evil dark elves. And because they were super evil dark elves, it came up later where it's like, oh, that might be racially insensitive. So we're going to make it so that everybody can be, you know, you don't have to choose. You can be a good guy. And it's like D&D already let you do that. You don't need to, I don't know. It's like sometimes you get a little too milk toast with everything, I guess. And I felt that that in Baldur's Gate.
The good part of that is that it does allow you to be whatever you want.
Yeah, it's more about visuals in that way, or your background, your history with your it definitely has a positive.
If it was like, oh, if you're a dragonborn, you're just way better as a fighter, for example, let's say, because maybe you're just birdly, right? You're just like strong. Then everybody would really just go that way because it makes too much sense to take something else, right? It's almost like it would be too good to pass up if it was a significant passive bonus.
It does, but just so you know, it also rewards those people who do so because they are passing up spells, or they are passing up a barbarian's rage, or they're passing up a cleric's healing abilities. But instead... Now you sort of have everything. And by the way, D&D already has 1,000 potions and 1,000 scrolls. So it's like they can already do that. So the idea of sort of overlapping is just, I don't know, it's just a little odd. And we've noticed it since, I think, 3rd edition. Humans give 1 free skill point and 25 carry weight. Kind of weak compared to the other races. Yeah, for sure. I mean, humans are milquetoast. They just are the average of averages. Good Day says, love your content, ACG. Miss Total Biscuit, and your reviews are on the same quality as John's. Jeez. Thank you. I don't, thank you. I'll just say that. Thank you very much. Goofer Game says, I haven't played many of these games, especially D&D focused stuff, so I was scared of the Dark Urge thing. Oh, but he did it anyway, and he said it's been super fun. That's awesome. Yeah, that's very cool that somebody chose it anyway, because it is fun. It is fun to do. If you're dark like me, like for example, at the starting in the early access, you have the Druid camp and all that stuff, and I killed everybody. I slaughtered that entire town, good and bad. Like I got done in a fight, and people are like, "Thanks for helping them," and I'm like, "No, I was just making you easier to fight." So both groups weren't against me, and I just slaughtered everybody. So delicious. Now I know you wouldn't do that, but for me, that fit my character and. The slip up, I sort of metagamed it as like, oh, he slipped one time and he went homicidal. It was a blast. I know other people would be like, how dare you do that? But I prefer to play by 5e rules, but I love that Larian gave us the option to play around a bit. Yeah, for sure. Not everyone will. In tabletop, I once played a rogue with a 7 dex. Guys, Kel, you and I've talked about this. My favorite of all characters I ever played was a thief who never successfully stole. He lied, and he paid people to tell stories about him. And it was one of the funnest characters I've ever played. He had terrible stats, but except for charisma, and he would basically spread his own stories. So everybody in the game thought he was good, even the other characters were like, and so he'd be like, I don't want to steal that, it's too easy. And they'd be like, okay. And in real life, he just couldn't steal anything. So fun to do those kind of things. Brala says, how do you guys feel about the seemingly lack of marketing for Mike? We'll talk about Starfield for sure. Yeah, we will talk about Starfield. Everyone turns into my therapist with Dark Urge. It's true. They do. Yeah, they do. What do you think of
setting up a situation there, Karak, by the way, with the Dark Urge, right? Because my plan is I'm going to be like a conflicted character. Sometimes I'm going to do evil shit.
Yep.
If I hate a character, if they're annoying, I might just slay them. And I'm on purpose selecting team members, like some that are going to like that type of stuff and some that won't, without revealing who they are. But, you know, there's one guy that's into that.
Yeah.
There's another that's more like goody two shoes. And my plan was actually to to have that and see how that conflict goes. I don't know if they're gonna at some point just outright reject me if I do something awful. They're gonna be like, dude, no, we're done.
I can guarantee you that they take all that into account. Say that they definitely take all of your choices into account. I found that out both the good way and the bad way. What I was talking about, or what I was going to ask you about, is I personally felt the graphics were really good. I had some performance issues and still do with the new patch. I have a test battle, the battle I was talking about, which is 14 plus people with a lot of magic users. So it's sort of like, here's the big battle, because the boss battles, a couple bosses you could say, which I slaughtered, they were, FPS was normal. But with this one, it gets pretty low even now. What's your performance like? 3090 Ti, right?
3090. And the game is running at 144 FPS.
There you go.
4K.
4K. Jesus,
with
4K?
DLSS.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
Quality DLSS, but Ultra, 144 FPS stable. And it looks really good.
Have you got into the big battles like I'm talking about? Because I would like to know what your FPS is then.
Not big yet. I'm still like in the first few areas.
Have you ever had a, Johnny, when you were attacking enemies, when you get even in a slightly bigger group, have you ever had a guy stall on what he's thinking? Because it does happen, where I would have guys on their CPU turn just standing there for a great deal of time trying to decide what to do. Have you had that yet?
Not yet. I've had small hiccups sometimes when it transitions from a gameplay where you're out in the map and it goes into a cutscene. Sometimes there's a small hiccup there. And I did notice, because I played some multiplayer, it was very framey in multiplayer.
Yeah, it's definitely framey. Yeah, it's definitely
I noticed it a lot.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It is something that you see when you're playing it with multiplayer, that it's almost like they're having an issue syncing the frame rate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I definitely have enjoyed multiplayer, but I still like it by myself more. I just like, I like to control everybody.
I can't, I'm just going to do a solo because it's not really.
It's not conducive also to somebody else who may not like you being homicide, or maybe not liking you be the other way. And
that's another thing, because I was playing with a friend and she was like, dude, I'm not getting behind some of your decisions here. This is not working out.
That's why I always tell people, if you're not behind me, you're in front of me, man. And I'm going to mow you down just like everybody else. I've killed my characters a couple times in this game. Like, knocked them down because they were arguing with me. But like, there's some crazy stuff you can do. 2K on my end with no DLSS, 2K. What is that, 1440p? Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. That's a problem with DOS too, as well.
By the way, the game engine looks awesome. Like, because when you see some of the rendered stuff, and it's closer up, like in some of the like rendered cutscenes and stuff, it looks insane. You see the eyes with like glow inside of them, and like so much detail there, and people interacting with stuff. Pretty awesome to see.
I think, did DOS 2 have 3D discussions like this does, where you go into the full cutscene with every single and every single NPC like this game does?
I don't remember seeing anything close to this, man.
Because that's the big adjustment to me, Johnny. The reason why it feels more like BioWare is because, yes, you're not third person in the behind the shoulder, but when you talk to any goblin, every goblin looks different. When you talk to any elf, every single elf looks different. There's even an NPC that has 2 or 3 lines to tell you to leave looks absolutely unique, that I can remember where they are on any map, where I'm like, I know who that is. That's the bald, super dark dwarf who's really bitchy, and I know exactly
and initially,
where they are.
I was calling the game's bluff, because I was walking around and everybody had a dialogue bubble when I hovered over them. And I was like, there's no way all these motherfuckers have a dialogue voiced and like with, like
facial animations
custom appearance, facial, like, and everybody that I ran into had like something unique to them, and it was quality. It's not like your cousin coming in to do a few lines for,
Oh, that's the other thing. So I know not everybody likes that I cover sound, music, and voice, but to me, it's half of the identity of a game. If it's
It is.
if it's poorly done,
It keeps you interested.
that can be the
if
identity.
It's poorly done, you lose interest, don't you?
Yeah, and oh, dude, it's so good. The audio layering, the multiple samples when you're walking on the beach and you can hear seagulls and the water lapping. And it's, by the way, I'm mentioning too, there's like 16. And there were a couple times where I was just listening, sitting in a place, listening to audio going like, are you kidding me? I can hear water dripping over here. And you have to parse them. You start like going like, okay, there's this sample that, oh man, it is so, and the voices, like you mentioned, are just every person. Like, I don't know if you've got the wizard, but later when you get a wizard, he just has this different way of talking that is at times almost not Southern, but there's a cadence and a shorthand that he uses occasionally, even though he's eloquent, that I was like, oh wow, I love this guy. And then the vampire, that's not a spoiler, by the way. He literally says that he is in the thing. Or Kindred, that character is very foppish, very like 1700th century, high-necked, well, and it's a trope that is going to occur in the game. And it dials, it shoots the trope and then also adds to it. And I just think that's all. I did feel the voices sounded a bit weird where the quality wasn't the same for each line, but maybe it was on my end. The sneaking. The sneaking. I got it. We got to talk about that. The sneaking is so good. The vocals when they're like, and you're like, dude, that is so immersive,
That's
man.
awesome.
It's so good. It's so good. Well, some of the NPCs don't really say anything, like 3 words, and that's the extent. You aren't getting into depth convo with everybody. Personally, I can say I've had more than 3 words with every single person I've ever clicked. Now, that doesn't mean I've clicked every single person, but most of them, even if they're saying go
some
away.
People don't have much to say. They're just like, it's a shitty situation that's going on. That's it.
Yeah, love the audio too, but on the headset, the voice line sound echoey for me. That, by the way, is probably your hardware. Just so you know, I had somebody else saying that, and I listened to my audio when I was doing the review, and I listened while I was playing, and I didn't have it. And when I was talking to them, they did have a setting on, I believe on their sound card or Windows side that was causing that, or on the Xbox. This isn't on the Xbox I want to describe. On the Xbox and PlayStation, they also have these audio settings that sometimes you'll switch on and you'll forget. And that's the same way with PC.
I had that issue with my SteelSeries headphones. They have something that's like a fake surround that they do. It's DTS or
it is DTS, DTX. Yeah.
And something about that felt echoey because what they do, they kind of intermix the right and left channels to create this effect.
Fake surround.
And in some stuff, it actually does sound echoey. So just something to be aware of. Maybe switching to normal stereo might.
Deep Activity says, thumbs up. Smashed the button. Longtime ACG fan. Thank you. Love the knowledge and reviews. Thank you very much. But you also got to like Johnny, of course. Hey, the podcast is back. Yes, it is. I find it hard to get into top-down style games. This is Six Blades. I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I get where he's coming from. For sure.
You know what I like, though? Some classes are very easy to, like, they make the game very easy to play. Like, if you have a party where, like, you got a fighter, maybe a rogue, you know what I mean? Like, keep it simple. You can have a great time and not have 2,000 spells.
Yeah,
I mean, option, is all I'm saying. And
they have spells, of course.
They will,
They will, but yeah, if you want to, that's why I did it, Johnny. I was like, I'll just pick the fighter and do what I want to do. And then when I want to control them, you're always controlling them anyway. So it's like, they're the ones with the spells. Why do I need to double up on spells? Because I knew there was going to be at least one spell. They always have one crazy spellcaster. Like it's it's a thing.
A class that you liked especially or disliked that you tried?
So we talked about this on Twitter, and this is metagaming deep level, but I did just have somebody DM me that this idea worked. A lot of times when I am playing a game, I will purposely choose an idea or a character class I hate. And the reason why is it will cause me to go into the game with a different angle. So Druid is somebody that I'm not in love with. So choosing a druid or having one on my team causes me to think about things differently. For example, if you transform into an animal and you're friendly with animals, if I'm just slaughtering animals, there's a meta game going on. There's sort of like a different thought process. So personally, I would say I didn't hate anybody, but the bard is super powerful, and I didn't choose it because I knew they were powerful. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this, like, because I know you'll hear, there's already videos and some articles saying, like, the bard class is insane. They can be. But I distinctly chose against that. But I would say favorite, no. Overall, I think they're all handled quite well. And again, you're a team, so I feel like everybody's represented. So if I hated somebody, nobody's been unuseful either. So no, I would say there's nobody I disliked at all. Thane, $100 super chat. Keep cooking. Thank you very much. We always will. Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys definitely help the channel keep going. Let's see. Love the audio tube. Okay, I read that. Will we ever get another Legacy of Kain game? Well, that's a combo breaker. I don't know. Probably. Legacy of Kain's a big title. We're starting to see these companies go back for remakes and reimagination-ing-ings. I tend to do that as well with different classes, Powder Keg says, choosing somebody who's different. Yeah, it's fun, man. It's fun to choose somebody you don't think you'll like, and it can be amazing. Silver Eye says, being 44 years old and a gamer, you're one of the few reviewers I follow. Oh, well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Let's look at questions in the podcast Discord. Rick says, many gamers have a fond memory of classic cheat codes that unlocked hidden features. What's your all-time favorite cheat code? Mine is probably NBA Jam, letting me play as Bill Clinton. That was mine. Bill Clinton and his wife were both in NBA Jam. Yeah, and it was awesome. They had a ton.
What a random.
It was. They had a ton of those. Did you do cheat codes when you were younger?
Very little. I remember doing Who's Your Daddy in Age of Empires 2.
Yeah.
You remember the Cobra cars or whatever, the Viper cars?
Yeah.
Not Robin Williams. Robin Hood.
Robin Hood.
That was for money, I think.
Oh, gotcha. The code. Yeah, Robin Hood was for money. I get what you're saying. Yeah. I don't know about you. I just didn't do them very much when I was younger. I sort of played I was a little nervous if I did a code, I wouldn't concentrate on the game.
I didn't have a very good experiences with cheat codes because early on I figured like every time I did it, I lost the fun of the game pretty quickly.
Me too.
GTA, the moment I put a cheat for like all weapons, I'm done. Right?
Yeah. And dude, I absolutely know where you're coming from. Yeah. So I heard that this is from Vapor. I heard that some other game companies and developers are freaking out about this game and its scope. Is that true? So yeah, I will talk about that for a second. So there were some developers who were sort of doing not damage control because it's not damage to them yet, but they were like, hey, please don't consider Baldur's Gate 3 the norm for RPGs. And the thing is that while that is true, every game at a certain cost, people want certain things from it, and games can be different. And so I don't necessarily see their worry because I've played Mass Effect and I've played Dragon Age Inquisition and I've played Elix 2, and then we're playing this. They're all their own thing. And so maybe they're talking about the 3D and everybody talking, and I get that, but it's its own thing. And so saying, hey, everybody, don't think that Baldur's Gate 3 is a normal game or is like the standard. I don't know about you, Johnny, but when I played Baldur's Gate 3, I don't think the standard is unattainable for other companies.
I agree.
If that makes sense.
I think part of the beauty of an amazing game is that it raises the bar.
Yeah, that too.
Of what makes an incredible game. Because before that point, you thought, oh, such was the peak.
Right.
But now, whoa, we got all this stuff with the 3D cutscenes, people interacting with the environments, much more detail, incredible voice acting. The scope of the game is insane. This is possible. It's not like they're playing with a different set of crayons than...
Right. And not only that, but this has been possible since the 360 and PS2 and all that, because I played Two Worlds 1 and 2, which were not great games. And both of them had 3D. Every time you talk to an NPC, they turned into a model. So it's like, it's not necessarily unheard of to see this kind of stuff. What's happened with Baldur's Gate is the time and the effort they spent. Also, they have not a crutch. Their rule system is already known to them, which is 5th edition. They don't need to make their own rules and balance that kind of stuff. They need to translate it into a video game, but they have the rules. You can open a rule book and say, okay.
That is true. And
this is the
they
thing.
have an established way of developing games that comes from the Divinity series that's very present here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call it derivative because that sounds bad, but
Additive. It is additive to what they've done prior.
It's based on the Divinity Original Sin 2 and prior.
Divine Divinity is where all this started, dude. All these choices.
By the way, terrible title. Divine Divinity. God,
it's terrible. And I used to go, I would go to work and talk to Cadiz, and the music would get stuck in my head and be all like, Divine Divinity, and be like, dude, shut up about the game. And I'm like, no, you don't understand, man. Because it was like Diablo, but with
for
RPG.
the longest time, I thought you were just getting the name wrong.
Oh, did you? Like, because you saw Divinity Original Sin. Name. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
But no, that was actually how it was called.
Yeah. Oh, such great games, man. God, those games are good. I mean, devs are used to releasing half buggy games, and gamers allow it. Some gamers don't, but I get what you're saying. And also, I just think a lot of people will look at this, and there's issues with Baldur's Gate 3, and we can talk about those too, but I didn't want to skew negative because we already know there's some issues. But it's not perfect either. No game is. But what I mean is some of the stuff they do is questionable. Their HUD is pretty messy. And it just is. There's no real way to show everything. And I don't, maybe making the icons really small would do that, what have you. There's issues there. There's issues with technical stuff we saw. I don't know about you. Fast travel to any location, even another map, is faster than going to the edge of the map and leaving it, which I still don't get. I would fast travel and it would be 2 seconds to go anywhere in the world. But if I went between locations, it's obviously dumping assets and then loading in the new assets. And I don't know why it's such a deal.
That's true.
I was having
that is true.
Let's see. It's all packaged together to make a better deal. BG's combat isn't as good or as deep as DOS 2. Man, I do not agree.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, not only do I not agree, but it's like I've reviewed both, and I got to say that I don't know how far this person is. That's also a thing. But
it could also be like what classes they play, because like we were saying, some are a bit more on the simple side, right?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. But yeah, it's all great. It's all great because it raises the bar a little bit.
By the way, I wanted to talk about the setting of the game a little bit without like spoilers.
Oh yeah, no spoilers.
Because I'm someone who hasn't played the original Baldur's games, so I actually didn't know like what am I in for? What is the tone of the story? Is it similar to Divinity, or is it darker? I didn't really know. So, but straight away, like setting the tone, right? I mean, without talking about details of the cutscenes and stuff, but like, what a way to. I thought there was a really good cutscene in the start to set the tone of things to come, and it was really cool, man. The fantasy of the elements in the cutscene. Yeah. Like there's some dragons there. There's a lot of shit happening, and I didn't expect the Cthulhu style stuff going on. I didn't know that was a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that I will say about other Baldur's Gates is they're so old that their entire delivery system of everything was different, and including no 3D discussions, that kind of stuff, a lot less interactions. I definitely can see why somebody would play Baldur's Gate 3 and say, this doesn't feel exactly tonally the same. But I would also agree that there are so many changes they've made, quality of life improvements, and just options that, it doesn't feel... It's Baldur's Gate 3, but I can certainly see somebody saying that it doesn't feel exactly like 1 or 2. But I would also say 1 and 2 are so ancient that I don't know I would want it. It just depends. I think tonally it's pretty close. There's some differences.
So when you compare it to Divinity Original Sin 2, their prior game, would you say, is it fair to say that this skews significantly darker as
No.
a story, or
Oh
like
yeah,
the
then
tone of
2 was a little jokey. Yeah, I would say Baldur's Gate 3 does versus Divinity Original
Yeah.
Sin 2. Yeah, Divinity Original Sins 2 story did not grab me at all. And
No?
no, not nearly as much as this one. But that's also because there's so many characters who have interactions and characters, and you can hire hirelings in it. So if you don't want to use one of the party members,
I
you can
agree.
just-
I'm way more involved in already. I'm already more
Yeah.
interested.
Dude, it's because they knock it out of the park at the starting. You're on a Spelljammer
Yeah.
ship, you know, or not a Spelljammer, but you're on the Illithid ship, and what do they call it? The Nautiloid or whatever. And you're on this. Yeah, and you're on this ship, and you're seeing the mind flayers right away. You're seeing all these different characters right away, and like you said, they also figure out psionics, which has always been sort of a tentatively loved and hated in some D&D, but they add that and magic, and it's a little bit like superheroes, where you get superheroes that use different powers. For example, Wonder Woman and Superman, and you're like, well, Superman's weak to magic, and you're like, yeah, but he's also flies faster than light. So, you know, there's some odd
Sure.
processes there. So I wasn't sure how they'd handle it, but they handled it perfectly. The idea of what's going on, why you have powers, why some people and like them and don't, is just so well. Reading some here. I'm playing 57 XT that's similar in power to your card. The game runs fine. Some people are saying that they're having some issues. Yeah, it's unfortunately just a thing. Peter says, "Hi guys, 55-year-old gamer here. I'm dying to play this game, but I'm considering waiting for the Xbox release date." So we're going to talk about this a little bit. This is coming for the PlayStation later, and it's coming for the Xbox later. And one of the issues with the Xbox, and you see some developers saying we have no issue with the S, and others saying they have an issue with the S. One of the problems with the different platforms is that one game may push it and one game won't. And we saw this, for example, with Gotham Knights only hitting 30 FPS because it was a cooperative open world, which is what we're seeing with Baldur's Gate, which is a cooperative open world. So you have this world that you have to be able to load twice. And that's one of the places where the S in particular has a different memory configuration and on this particular type of game. That's why some developers are saying we've never had an issue with the S. And some are like, you have to plan for it. And others are like, it's not working for our game. Or it's not yet. With these guys, I'm sure they'll get it running, but I would say don't wait on the Xbox version, because they haven't even tentatively, other than saying it's 2024, they haven't even tentatively said when and how far along they are. So we don't know what the error is or what problem they're getting. And I had issues on my PC with 64 gigs of RAM. So if I have issues on a massive PC, the occasional FPS or a crash here and there, you're going to get it on consoles that aren't as powerful.
Did you try it on the Steam Deck, by the way?
Yeah, but dude, the Steam Deck, I know people love the Steam Deck. I'm just going to say what I think. The Steam Deck on low settings it didn't look great. So what I did was I streamed it to the G Cloud, which looked phenomenal because of my PC. And then it's on GeForce Now. So you can stream it off of GeForce Now, which lag isn't an issue. It's not anyway now with GeForce Now, depending on where you are. But I was able to stream it from GeForce Now. It felt completely native. I did the G Deck and I did the One X Player. Here's the big issue, Johnny. A 7-inch screen is a lot of data. So your issues with the HUD is compounded 70 times when you're on a 7-inch screen. So the One X Player Pro has an 8.4-inch screen, and also streamed it to a tablet that was 11. Those were fine. 7 inches, and having to lower the graphics to the point that like the ground looked like MASH, it's not for me personally.
So when you're streaming to the tablet, are you playing on gamepad?
I did both. I played on gamepad and I tried it like mimicking the mouse on the tablet.
So it would be just like on the screen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and for that kind of game, that worked fine. I wouldn't play it that way. I like the controller version. I thought the controller was just epic, so I just stuck with the controller. And the G Cloud and the One X Player Pro have, their joysticks on the side, so that's easy enough. It was great, though. It's very cool to see it, and I played probably 22 games in bed, or 22 hours in bed alone.
Nice.
You know, yeah, just like laying down. I usually lay down an hour or two before I go to sleep so I can read, and I just replaced it with this. And that was an hour in the morning, less hours than that, more like 14 or 15 in bed. Somebody got on me. I want to say thank you to everybody who was worried about my health. People were like, he played. I said this in the review. I said I played for 20 hours.
20 hours like in one day.
Yeah, let me explain something. Unless you're doing that every day, the human body is incredible at recouping occasional damage. I don't drink and I don't smoke. So the occasional time where I play 20 hours is because I'm having a good time. Would I play 20 hours if the game sucked? No. No, it would never happen, because my brain, the way I know how to stop playing a game for review is when I want to stop playing the game for review. So I play it until I don't want to play it anymore, whether to be tired or not liking the game. So I saw some people who were nervous. They were like, oh, that's a long time to sit. It is. It is. But it's one day.
Sure. Yeah.
Pilots fly longer than that a lot of times. So it's like, it's not really that crazy. But just to tell people, thank you for worrying about it, but it was not a thing. I still worked out those days. Paradox wants to know any moments that you guys feel stood out in BG3, not necessarily story, but mechanics or visuals.
Dude, like I said, the detail where you can see the glow in the eyes of characters in cutscenes,
yeah,
and they are actually interacting with stuff, that's different. I don't remember seeing that in Divinity. I don't know if it's a different engine. It looks very detailed at times.
For me, was there something that stood out? Audio. I mean, beyond belief, audio.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, it just incredible. Why are you getting ads? I don't know. It's YouTube. I'm sorry. I would say that when you look at Baldur's Gate 3, if you try to separate story from it and you look at the mechanics, it's just like Divinity Original Sin, that you can do a ton of things, but there's also the bonus activities or bonus actions, like Johnny said. I also killed 7,000 people with shoes by throwing shoes at their faces. I mean, the amount of people I killed with boots, I should have just named myself like Boot Slayer. I killed a boss with a pair of boots because he knocked my sword out of my hand. And I have the improvised throw on that character. And I was like, bitch, you're dead. And I threw a pair of boots and killed him. And I was like, come on, man. Like, that's awesome. Like, that was fun.
Can you pick up the boots after tossing them?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I killed guys with swords, picked up my sword afterwards. And that's what's so cool about the game is when you're out, you know, your sword isn't doing damage, you'd be like, hey, he doesn't take slicing damage. Well, a pair of boots does bludgeoning, I think. So it's like, I'm going to hit him with a pair of boots and see what... Oh, by the way, bones. Picking up all the bones. Just throwing bones at everybody. Like, everything on the ground I picked up and used as a weapon. I didn't sell a lot of stuff.
And by the way, that's a very D&D thing, isn't it? It's like, what if I toss the sword that I have in my inventory? Like, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's kind of a...
Dude, so here's the thing, Johnny. Here's a little secret. If you don't have a proficient skill in a weapon, that weapon is still highly useful throwing at the face of an enemy.
Just toss it,
Yeah, so I had all my guys with like 7 short swords, and I would be running around, and I'd be like, oh, I don't have ranged, or I didn't want to run between enemies because the attack of opportunity shit, which can kill you easily. So I was I was just all, and there was just swords flying at people, and I hit a lot of times. So I was like, hey, man, if it worked. Good to hear, because I'm a sucker for good audio. Paradox says, yeah, it's which is who has the stronger gate, Baldur or Heaven's Gate? Baldur. Ginger Prime says, wish they'd give us the option to suppress them for members. Oh, ads, yeah. It's ads. They've been doing it a lot lately, as somebody said. I'll try to figure it out on the next podcast. I apologize, and thanks for showing up, regardless of YouTube trying to screw me over at all points. Shot an oil barrel and watch them burn, then douse it with water and freeze them. Yeah, exactly. Like the combos
that's so good.
Yeah, dude. It is so fun, man. There's so much stuff. It is definitely in the conversation for Game of the Year for me. For sure.
Yeah. I love the accidents as well, because I have like Well, I have, for example, a melee guy, but I also have a wizard.
Right.
My main guy is a wizard. So I have like some AoE spells that I want to do. For example, I want to throw the gunk on the ground and light it on fire.
Right.
And sometimes inevitably, my guy walks into the fire, or he gets hit by the gunk and he's now like stumbling, and I don't know, it's beautiful sometimes.
I killed so many of my guys in battle on accident because I was clicking quick, and I talk about it in the review. I'm like, you got to watch out. And I'll be like, one time I drank an enlarged potion and then drank another potion of a different kind I can't remember. And so my guy was enlarged, had a massive weapon, had a bonus to the weapon, and had a special for the weapon he had to attack prior to get. So it's this gnarly attack. And there's an undead who was killing us. And I clicked on my guy, and absolutely, it was like,
murdered.
and I think it was full health. And it was like 57 points of damage. And it was a critical hit. And I had a skill that if you crit, it does something else. It rolls twice for damage, I think. And so it was max damage. And I was like, oh no, because that was the guy with the turn undead spell. And I was like, uh-oh, that's not going to work. Yeah. Maybe one day when it's on sale, I'll give it a try. I don't think ACG kills his party by accident. I mean, I did say earlier, I did knock out a couple of my people. Yeah, there were a couple people where I purposely knocked them out. Yeah, dude, game of the year. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely in the list. I would say, I don't know. What do you think? Would you say it's in the game of the year discussion for you, or?
I think so. It's still early for me to say because I'm early in the game. But yeah, I wouldn't put Remnant in that conversation. Funny enough,
probably
I think it's a bit hyperbole for
yeah.
me. I had a lot of fun with it, but I just don't think it's that level of production.
Yeah. How many hours do you think you have?
In what, Baldurs?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I can double check. Actually, I'm curious. It's not that many. It's probably around 6. Let me see.
The Peoples and Dragons.
No, it's 9 hours.
Peoples and Dragons, $5 super chat. What's up, dude? He says, does everything catch and stay on fire on like Divinity Original Sin? So you can definitely light things on fire, and you have spells that cause fire on the ground. But one thing that at least I did not encounter was, like, let's say lighting grass on fire and see it propagate or anything like that. I didn't see, but I also may not have even cast fire on grass.
But the fire does stay on a little bit. So if you light a puddle on fire, it will stay on for like a couple turns or something.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the super chat, peoples. I appreciate it. I would also say when we look, the stuff I did in this game was so stupid. But when you look at the game and you look at the choices, one of the things I like is, so I have a discussion with a friend where we're just going to not use the party members, and we're going to all have gnome monks. Everybody's just going to be a gnome monk. And when you look at Baldur's Gate, Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, and you look at these games that allow that, I think the one nice thing is that if you don't know D&D, it does tutorials enough so that you'll be able to get it. It shows you tutorials and roles, so you see the stuff happening. It shows you the words for the different skills, and if you highlight or hold on that, it will also pop up and tell you the bonuses, which I didn't know for the first like 4 hours of the game. And I was trying to figure out what my persuasion bonus was because it was showing up in narratives. And then highlighting it, I found out it pops up. I think everybody can play this in pretty much whatever way they want, because I also feel that the difficulty, while high on the hardest, is not rushing. That's what I feel so far. What'd you play on difficulty?
Just a balanced difficulty.
Yeah. What are you feeling? Are you feeling like it's doable? Like dangerous but doable?
Dangerous
D&D?
but doable. It reminds me of Divinity Original Sin, where like the way you approach a fight is everything. So the way you're starting it, the position of your guys, are you on the high ground?
Yeah.
Are you
advantages.
Do you have some protection, or are you in a tiny choke where they can throw a firebomb and get everybody? Like that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
It can turn the same fight into like undoable, or very easy. So I feel like that's exactly the same still, where you have to really think about how you're taking the fight a lot. And this is where maybe some new people might be a bit surprised. They might go into a fight and say, dude, it's impossible. I've tried it 10 times and I can't get it. Have you tried different approaches? Because it makes a giant difference.
Yeah, and dude, I don't know about you, but I was playing that, and I was in sneak mode, and my guys would jump into a fight alone so many times. That's the one thing I complained about in the review. I was like, I wish it was a little tighter, because some guys won't jump either, or can't clear a ravine, and you'll clear it, and there'll be an enemy, and your guy's in battle, and the other dude's like, hey, I can't jump this, and you're like, oh no, what? And so you have one or two guys in a fight, and two aren't in the fight, and you have to like jump between them. And I feel that this is just a bit too loose in how we all know that there are times where you want your thief hitting somebody first, or your rogue with a range shot, a sneak shot. I feel that it's almost too loose, and that the ability to get into a battle sort of accidentally after, and I think the developers put battles after some jumps for whatever reason, but I think that there were too many of them, and I would like to have seen them tighten that up a bit, because it's happened to me a lot, where I was like, oh God, now I gotta split group, and I gotta like go click this guy, have it go to a different section. Yeah. There were a couple people asking questions here. Teleki says, just discovered I'm not getting your videos in my subscription feed. Unsubscribed and resubscribed, and your BG3 and Expanse reviews appeared. Thank you very much. Anybody else, if you're not getting the videos, that's all you can do is unsubscribe, resubscribe with the notify all. I appreciate it, and that's the only way I can think to fix it. Ginger says, I think there's a very clear difference between East and West RPGs, and that brings back the idea of JRPG as a real subgenre. Oh, it is. Oh, right. That was a thing for a small amount of time, wasn't it? That like people were saying, let's remove the JRPG. No. Like it is just a territories difference and style, and that's okay. And it's okay because we might also have Middle Eastern role-playing games with different mythologies, different play style that maybe they like. That's cool too, and we'll find a title for them. But saying West is, or saying WRPG is not racist, JRPG is just like, come on, guys. At some point, you just have to be like, it is the location and a certain thing that demographic makes in a style.
Yeah, and you can, it's the style of narrative. You can kind of like put your finger on
Final Fantasy versus this.
Western.
Come on.
That's Yeah.
Elo Games says, will it be optimized well enough for the PS5? I think so. Yeah, I think we're going to be in good shape for the PS5 and even the Xbox when they get that figured out. Charles says, Karak, you playing on highest difficulty? No, I played on all three. And somebody else asked, can you switch it? You can switch it at any time, even during a battle, which was all. Yeah, so like if you go into a battle and you're out, this guy's got a bunch of hit points and I wasn't prepared. If you want, you can just go to easy. I reloaded usually, but you can do it, and I did check. So you definitely can do that. Does anybody have any questions about Baldur's Gate prior to us moving on from here? Let me make sure at the same time I read the super chats, and we'll also get a Discord question. The Discord question was, Jesus Crust says, what are some improvements and revisions you'd like to see in the next generation of PC handhelds? Battery.
Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it?
It is. Battery's insane. I mean, dude, it's insane. It's insane how long the 1X Player Pro lasts compared to the Ally. The Ally is not a portable, unless you consider a portable being fucking plugged into a battery bank. Like, and then they're pushing 120 hertz screens, and I'm like, I get it, but there's more important things, like being portable. We discussed this with the Switch. They called it portable. It's this fucking big. Like, sure, it's portable, if you know, in a way, but it's battery lasted at least. And here, the batteries on these are so crappy, man. They're so, you know, you're throwing these powerful chips in there, and then you're throwing these minuscule batteries to make it comfortable. And it's like, I get the comfort issue, because a big battery can weigh a lot, but comfort's not going to be a thing if your battery lasts 45 minutes.
Yeah. You know, it strikes me that they're trying to solve for two groups of people. The group of people who want to take their console away, go on a train ride for hours and play, and the people who are introverts and stay at home, and they
want to
just
sit on
want
their
something
couch
to play in bed or play on the couch when their family is using the TV, whatever it may be. And it strikes me that those are just two very different groups of people.
Absolutely. And different hardware requirements too, because if you're going portable, the guarantee is you will never have, or most likely will not have, a Wi-Fi signal. It's like, what does this do when I'm holding it connected to nothing? But then you have like the G Cloud, which I love. I see Ginger uses one too, to just stream games too. Plus it's Android, so you can play Android games on it. But it's fantastic for that because the battery lasts 11 hours because all you're doing is using the screen.
And it doesn't get hot in your
hands.
And
it doesn't get hot. Yeah. So it's like, and this is why I know we all agree that it is odd that PlayStation has a handheld for remote at home, not remote away, but, you know, home streaming. But there is a contingent, as Johnny just said, of people who really do want to be able to lay in bed and play their PlayStation game. And I got nothing but like agreement.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
Because there are some things that you can't optimize for both groups of people. For example, battery.
Yeah.
Do you want a lot of battery life? It's bigger, maybe generates more heat.
Uncomfortable to hold.
Uncomfortable to hold. Comfort. Do you care about comfort? That probably means a bigger size too. So if you're staying at home, you're probably happy with that. If you're taking it on the go, you don't want something huge. So some of these sliders, you know, like they kind of go opposite direction depending on who you're looking
You ever
at.
see anybody who tries to explain a bunch of shit in like a spreadsheet or a Venn diagram and there's too many branches and people just check out? That's sort of what's going on with the handheld, is that there's at least 3 branches just for remote. And then there's, including comfort, all that. But for me, Johnny, the big thing is that if the thumbstick is too close to my palm, it cramps my thumb fast. And all these handhelds, other than the Steam Deck, the Lenovo's new one that they're bringing out, has thumbsticks that are too short. They're too close to my palm. And so what happens is I end up holding it in a really awkward way. And that's one thing for comfort that maybe for me is a different thing than somebody else. Where for me, comfort may not be, I can hold shit. Like I lift weights, I go out, like I can hold a less than 1 pound handheld for a long time. But if it hurts to hold because of a cramp or whatever, then I have a slightly different need than you may have. And we all have different needs. That's one of the reasons why I can't wait until more people 3D print grips for some of these controllers, like we saw the Satisfy for the Switch. The Satisfy for the Switch is mind blowing.
It's way better.
Oh, dude, when you put the Satisfy controller on, and they've contacted me to like sell it because I'm always talking about it, but I'm like, nah, man, I was just, here's some free publicity. Don't know why I was having a problem with that. That thing is so good, dude. It makes the Switch 10 times more comfortable. And
I don't think I can play the Switch without that, because I have like
long fingers.
Yeah. So when I'm grabbing, from the Joy-Cons, I can't do it for very long, man. I get like legit lack of circulation or something in the hands. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, no, I get it. A lot of people are saying some of the same stuff here where they're talking about the difference in comfort. So it's good to know that a lot of people it's good to know people want different things, but it's also good to know that all these companies are like releasing different stuff for different people. I personally don't believe the ROG Ally is the future at all, as a person who owns one. But I do see where they were going with power. But luckily, 2 or 3 other companies are using the same chips. One's coming out for $749, which is pretty close to the price of the ROG. Also, with this cost, Johnny, it needs to satisfy everything, to use the Satisfy name again. But when I spend that much for a handheld, I do not want to hear about the battery. I don't want to hear about ROG Ally's subreddit that's explode because it burns up their SD reader. Come on. That's on them. And so if I'm paying $700 for a thing I'm going to hold in my hands, $700, you best bring your fucking A game.
And there's software, people getting blue screens, right?
Dude,
I mean,
dude, ROG, it's Asus. Like, everybody should have known. Everybody should have known.
That's also a problem, isn't it? Because if you do have a problem, getting into the customer support with Asus isn't always a great experience. I mean, I've heard of many people who have had really bad experiences with them. I don't want to malign in case it's not accurate, but I've definitely heard a lot of horror stories.
Yeah. Bombeeks, $12 super chat. Only here to show some support, but we'll listen later. Thank you very much. SBZ says cloud gaming's only great for people with good internet. Yeah. Well, not good. You don't need good. You need 15, which is pretty normal now. But yeah, if you have bad internet, online gaming.
It's becoming more commonplace.
It is, but the thing about...
Also,
oh, go for it.
On.
No, go for it.
No, you continue.
I was just going to say, I think the thing about streaming, just really quick, is that saying streaming is only good if you have good internet is like saying online of anything is only good if you have good internet. That's not to be said, because that's of course. Like, there's like, if you can't even stream a low quality stream to your stream, then you're probably not playing online with somebody either. You know, if you're getting that low.
What I was going to say is I think a lot of people don't devote any energy to optimizing their internet situation, where they just simply have their ISP router there. They've never looked into it. They don't know what settings are there. They don't know if, you know, they can maybe change the bands or like do anything at all. And when you start to look into some of the simple things you can do, you can get some way better Wi-Fi on your devices.
Do you know what I did? I just moved every single device to one channel, because I have a pretty good router, and then the other, or to two channels, and then the third and fourth channels I have for VR wireless and anything I want to be
really good.
fast.
Yeah, you can have a dedicated. Another thing, you can sometimes buy a second router.
Yeah.
For fairly cheap, because now they all are pretty good.
Yeah, right.
But sometimes the ISP router you get isn't that great,
right,
for Wi-Fi especially. So sometimes just getting a cheaper second router that plugs into that and, you know, gives you the Wi-Fi can actually help too.
Yeah, and the cool thing is about when you're at home, it's not going to matter. You're just going to be pushing directly through your own network. So it's not going to be internet. See, that's the other thing with streaming, is that streaming at home is gorgeous sometimes. Like, because you're not worried about the internet. In fact, the internet doesn't have to be on. You can just use your router and stream. And I did buy a second router for $69 that is just for wireless VR now. And it was $69 for a 5. Looking here, internet and cloud gaming is getting better and better. So here in 5 years, we'll see a bigger shift to it. Well, I don't know if you guys saw, but Xbox Cloud has seen a massive jump. Just a massive jump that we've seen, which was quite impressive. No one knows why. Some people think it's GTA 5, I think, going to cloud. But I think it's also some people getting prepped for Starfield and just buying into it. I could be wrong on that. I'm just guessing, but I think some people want to play it on Starfield. I mean, the fact is like, I mean, for a lot of people, it just works really well, and they don't want to worry about their hardware for their PC, maybe. They're just, I mean, for example, Baldur's Gate Ultra, all settings, runs perfect on GeForce. So it's like, there's a lot of people who are all, you know, whatever. Somebody says you don't own the hardware if you stream. Correct. That's the positive of it, I think. I mean, you don't have to buy the hardware. For example, I have a friend who has a very old video card, and he's doing GeForce because everything is better on there. So all of his games that are graphically intensive, he does there.
True. Or you can own the hardware, run the game locally in your PC, and stream it.
Yep. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Internet in my neck of the woods is rough. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people have that issue. Karak's router is worth more than my car. $60? You got a shitty car.
Damn, dude, you're flying a jalopy there. Holy shit.
Mitch has asked this a couple times. What do you guys think of the gaming industry in its current state? With microtransactions, pay to win, unpolished games, and the effect that pre-ordering has on a game quality rushing to release? There's a lot of games that are releasing like Baldur's Gate, though. I mean,
I was gonna push back a little. I don't think that's the status quo. We see it for sure.
We see it for sure.
Yeah.
But go ahead. You what?
And we see different variations of it, and I think there are different degrees of how bad it can be.
Yeah.
When you look at like the worst of the worst, those are actually pretty rare, I think. Right. You have cases more in the middle. For example, Exoprimal recently. Yeah. People had an issue because it's a full price game, but it's a PvP, VE, So you need people, right, to play. And you also have like, I think it was a battle pass with cosmetics or,
Gotcha.
something like that,
Right.
where to actually get access to some of the cool cosmetics you needed to pay.
Yeah.
Whether it's microtransactions or a pass, I don't remember exactly, but people took issue with that. And to me, even though that's not great, I would rather just pay full price and have some, some good cosmetics in it. I view that as not a really bad offender as far as
Right.
other cases go. So I would say we're more towards that average when you kind of look at all the cases in aggregate.
Yeah, and just because I'm older, I can tell you I played a ton of games that actually didn't run, and there was no internet to download a patch. There was just nothing, So like the thing is people, there's always rose-tinted glasses. The past was this, and it's like, dude, I played console games that would crash. There was no patch for that console game. We got a bunch of buggy games. By the way, Sega Genesis, Sega Saturn, PS1, PS2, SNES, and Genesis, Master System, all the way back to the old ones.
Yeah.
There were games I played where they would have huge issues, massive ones. And by the way, I still own many of these games. And I've still played a couple of them, and those issues can't even be patched. And they were released at $60. That's another thing. I still have the old ad from Fred Meyer where games were, $59.99. So it's like they were still at that price. So it's the devil and the devil's just changed. We're still dealing with the same stuff, but in a different format.
And it's funny. I saw this post about physics. Someone was saying how it's a crisis in physics, and they list a whole bunch of stuff that's going on, like there are all different types of ideas for
multi-dimensional stuff.
So they list a whole bunch of things, and the butt of the joke at the end is that those are all things that were happening like 50 years ago.
Right.
And so the joke is what people perceive as a crisis of today, actually, many of those elements were present in the past. We just sort of don't remember or don't have the recency of it.
Yeah. Recency bias is a thing, also indicating that we are seeing the thing. I want to make sure nobody thinks I'm saying we don't. We do. One of my first experiences with a fucking terrible microtransaction was, I believe, one of the Virtual Fighter games, and I downloaded a skin that I paid for, and I watched the download, and it was $49K, and I think I've told you, I realized that was already on the disc, and I was so upset. I was like, oh my God. But then I realized also, not that that's a positive, because that's a bad thing regardless, that we also do get more you can get more cosmetics. What we want to see is a game release with the cosmetics we expect normally. You look pretty good normally. And then if you want to buy, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a good example of this, where if you want to go nuts and ride a fiery bear, it's probably there. It's not in the normal game because it doesn't even fit. But the cosmetics look so different that you're like, oh, okay. But I actually have no issue playing that game with the armors I get in the game. That's what I want with every game, is that you get it, and your bottom level is like, that looks cool, that looks cool, that looks cool. Oh, I can look like Iron Man. Awesome, if I want to.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fit in the what do you call it?
I agree. I thought Diablo 4 did a good job actually on that, because a lot of the armors you get
look really cool
in the game look really good, and then the ones you can buy are pretty similar. Some of them are a bit more specific,
ornate or something.
Ornate, but really not that much. So I actually liked how they did it.
Comic Forsaken says ACG will review the PC or the PS5 version of Baldur's Gate. I have no clue unless it pops up. Like if it just what's up, Rogerio? Praise the sun. You should jump back in Discord, sucker. I was loving talking to you in Discord. It's so crazy to see some of these people from years ago. Well, and a lot of them are in Discord. I shouldn't say that. Yeah, I definitely see some of them. I think we see the difference with BG3 not having microtransactions and other issues because it's a privately owned company. That is possible, but I also believe that we've seen public companies release good games that do have all their stuff and don't have micros. There's 1,000 things that happen in development, man, and it's unfortunate. For example, Star Wars Squadrons was a great singular game, and that was from a company most people hate. And it was like, here's a full game of this particular thing that is in an IP that is crazy, Star Wars. So if any game is going to have micros or a ton of stuff, now I haven't checked, so somebody may correct me and say there's a bunch of micros now, but there weren't when it came out, and I was completely fine with that game, and that's from a company we all love to diss on. So it does happen. It's just not as often as we would like, which is every single time. Is it fair to say Absy is the Eeyore of the podcast? No, not at all. I think Absy is actually Absy is the emotional one. You could say Absy and Johnny are probably a little bit more emotional and like tied into stories. So Absy, when he gets upset about something, you can tell. Johnny, when he gets upset, he's a little bit more controlled than Absy, I would say. But also, when you both get excited, people get mad at me because I won't stop you guys from like interrupting each other. But I love it when you're both talking about like Diablo and you were both excited, and I was just sitting back and you'd go like, bah, 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 you go. And to me, that's what I like. I know it's a little bit more difficult, but to me, it keeps the energy high when we're all like, hey, who, hey, and everybody's so excited to talk about something. Like and we'll move to Starfield because I'm very excited for that. But to me, that's the best part is when I diss on a game because it sucks. I usually know there's a cool game coming. So it's just like when Redfall had its issues, I knew Baldur's Gate was coming, and I'm like, it looks like this is going to be good. You just move on, man. We can hold on to this shit forever, but it's like at some point, just go for it.
Yep.
Let's see. What else do we got? Bungie is the worst company when it comes to FOMO. Yeah, Bungie's. Hey, man, they got their problems. I don't even want to talk about it. Let's move on. Then Javier says, who's playing Dark Urge first playthrough? Both me and you, right? Did Dark Urge.
Yep.
Okay. Wannabe Dev says, what's up, guys? Is it just me? Just kidding. He hears me bitch about that. To be honest, and is it only me? I actually talked to Johnny about this prior to the podcast, where I was like, whenever I hear, is it only me? I'm just like, trying to cause issues. Do you feel as if you don't enjoy stuff as much with all the choice we have, be it games, shows, etc.? Feel like I enjoyed stuff more when I only had a few TV channels. I disagree, but I would say water cooler moments with these guys fulfill that, where it is difficult because Johnny will talk about a show and I'll be like, what?
No idea.
No idea. I'll be like, what are you even talking about? You're like, it's 7 seasons of blah, blah, blah. I'll be like, are you kidding me? But to me, that's what's exciting, is talking to you guys and finding out about From or some show. And I'll be like, what the is this? And I get it in a different way, I guess.
In a way, I think it makes it more special when you do find a show that like both people or people in a group have seen.
Yeah.
There have been times where you mentioned something and we have also seen it, and then whoa, okay, I saw that, and we can talk about it. So I think in a way, it's more rare to have the common
ground
where we've all seen this show. There are some big ones which most people will see, but oftentimes it's more rare. But it does make it more interesting, I think. And it's a bit like, I found this show you may not have seen, like you said with From. I haven't gotten to it yet, but you found that and you talked a lot about it. A lot of people were like coming to you like, oh, I saw it. And so it also creates its own opportunities.
Dude, the Discord is one of the, ignore that it's paid for. So we'll talk about any other group but my Discord, but that is what I'm talking about. When we get a bunch of people who are like, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I know a lot of people hadn't seen it, and I was talking it up in Parks and Rec, and because I like those as comedies, just sit back and eat a sandwich and watch a show.
Oh yeah.
And a game is the same way. You get a game and you're like, oh my God, I haven't played this, and you guys were telling me about games. I'm like, what are you talking about? One of the most magical things though is when you suggest something and then 2 or 3 days later somebody took the time, they trusted you enough, and that just happened with From as a TV show, where a bunch of people posted and were like, oh my God, thank God you told. And there's something, it's like Ghost of Tsushima when we were all posting pictures. It's like you can ignore the internet, ignore Twitterverse, and just be like, dude, this is that time where everybody's got that like almost tingly feeling. We're like, and that's what's happening with Baldur's Gate, where you get people who are like, dude, did you do this? No, I didn't even know that was possible. And you're just like, oh my God. So it's changed, like you said. It's changed, but I don't think it's worse. I just think
It's different, isn't it?
It's different. Yeah, it's different. Can we get a link of the other podcast members? Do you want to can you throw your link in? There's only one podcast member who has anything. So it's Johnny. Can you throw your link in chat without it saying it's a link?
Let me try it. I'm going to try it. But it's Johnny Plays Live. If you look for
Johnny Plays Live.
Without
YouTube.
an H, just JONNY Plays Live on YouTube and Twitch. You'll find me.
Yeah.
But I'll try to post the link.
So somebody else was asking something. They were saying, I missed it here. Shoot, I wanted to bring this up. Oh, Thane says, Karak, do you think the majority of gaming content creators skew on the chummy side with gaming houses? I think he means devs. So I would say that I don't know what the majority do. I do know that happens. I do know that recently in the last 2 weeks, I had a conversation with a developer who was saying that they wanted me to be involved in something, and one of the reasons why was because I wasn't. And so I do think some devs, one of the things we saw, and it's one of the reasons why I was telling these guys, I've stopped doing any console specific podcasts. I still watch Iron Lords because I like them, but I don't watch console specific podcasts because in the last 3 months, it's destroyed a lot of the enjoyment of gaming, because you'll see an Xbox podcast, a Nintendo podcast, and a PlayStation podcast all saying the same thing slightly differently to fit their role. And I'm like, well, the role should be that you like games. Now, I know that you're a fan of maybe some console you had, but and we might be fans of a particular thing, but games are what I'm excited about, whether it be board games, choose your own adventures, D&D, or video games. And I do think that what we saw was a lot of interviews and stuff being done, and the FTC investigation, I think, did Watergate video games a little bit, to where people were, we saw people going, I was surprised they lied to me in an interview. And we're like, why were you surprised? But then I realized one of the reasons why people might be surprised is because they do a lot of chummy stuff. And so if you don't, you might hold a small layer of paranoia that others don't. It's very difficult. And by the way, this isn't just video games. Anything in the world. If you want to pretend that you're a sociopath or a psychopath and you have no empathy and you can do all these business deals without any chummy, fine. But humans don't work that way for the majority. Humans do have a tendency, even you, I'll give you, if you said something on a podcast and you were a guest, it would be different than if you're sitting here with me all the time, where I'm like, I'll give Johnny a little bit more, let's say, a little bit more rope to figure out what he wants to say, versus maybe a podcast guest where I'm like, we don't talk about these things during the podcast, where I would let you, because I trust you and I know you, but I would never review your game. It wouldn't make it. I would, if you made a game, I'd be like, I'm not reviewing your game. Because I would probably still hammer on it. And if I didn't, and it was bad, then that would prove the opposite. You would
feel bad either way. Like if you went lied on me just because you know me.
I'd feel bad that way too. Right. I'd be like, oh man, I'm maybe telling somebody to buy a game that isn't a thing. I'm just happy arguments about BG3 are about its design and writing, as it's okay. You can ignore the microtransactions. Yeah, true. That is true. Six Blade says, again, it's not the devs that put the game out broken, it's investors. I'm not saying you're wrong that can happen, but I know developers who absolutely, for sure, 100% have released buggy games that are private. So it's not a black and white thing. Jabot says, please keep the upload on for podcasts on Spotify. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Man, speaking of board games, Resident Evil 2 and 3 board games are freaking awesome. We're doing an all-weekend board game day starting right after the podcast. So,
like locally?
Pretty close.
Place or?
No, so normally I rent a place that I find a place with no internet, which by the way is very hard. You have to actually search the opposite of what people normally search, which is does your cabin? Yeah, does your cabin have internet? If they don't, people don't rent it. I look for no internet because Cadiz is connected to his phone.
Like on the...
Yeah. Dude, Cadiz is, I think it's called thubbing now, but when your friendships or a relationship and somebody's talking to you through their phone, and dude, he's good if you remind him, but if you don't, you'll hear bing, 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 bing on his phone. And his roommates, who are really nice people. I don't know what it is, but they're like connected at the hip. So it's like 5 minutes, even though he's gone. They're like, "Are you thinking about me? Do you love me still?" Just like, oh my God, guys, come on. So, but we're renting a place that's within town because we have a sick dog. We have an ancient dog and he needs closer protection. So,
yeah.
Why would a developer want to put out a broken game? Exactly. Nobody does. I don't think I've ever known a developer in my life who wants to release a buggy game, but I have known developers who have. I think that's the thing is people think what want is
game.
Right. It's just
setting out.
Steam. I guess you could say Steam asset flips would be considered a person knowing they're releasing a bad game, but developers. I mean, big developers, some who've left the industry, some who haven't that I've talked to, as well as people that have been on the podcast. There's no desire to release. It's quite simply just at some point you have to be like,
yeah. At some point, it's got to go out too. So you also don't know exactly what you have in your hands until it's close to being developed.
Yeah.
Right? Because you may think you have a great idea initially, but then it's just not coming together. We've seen some cases where that happened with, Gollum or
Ashen
or Redfall, where it's just like, it just didn't.
Yeah, it just didn't come together.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else? Is it a lack of testing? No, it's a lack of money. I think some companies just run out of money. I mean, the one developer I talked to, they released probably 3 months earlier than they would want. I'm just guessing here because they didn't say the exact time, but for sure, they released a knowing. I mean, the game was just it was messed up, and it's funny because I talked to a lot of developers who go to publishing, and some publishers when I first started the industry. 2 of my friends were Sega, and they were very high, and they were some of the most devout gamers ever, as in the publisher. So that's the thing is you always hear indie dev, they must be perfect. Middle A dev, they must try the hardest. Triple A dev, they're trying the least. Publishers, they're all evil. And it's like, no, they're all people. And somebody can get a job, and I know publishers who are like, we need to release the best of the best. And we've seen that by some of these guys do it. And then you see others who are more lax. That's humanity. And it's every industry. Books, D&D games, board games. I've had some shit board games where I bought a board game and their errata is like longer than their rule book. Where they've made so many... Fantasy Flight, I'm talking to you guys. You guys are shit. Dude, I'm telling you, Johnny, they have to use old papyrus for their original writings in another language because their rule books will come. And I have a rule book, no lie, Johnny, that says, it's a 30-page rule book. Page 14 says to go to page 21. Guess what page 21 says? Go to page 14.
Beautiful.
I've never been so mad in my life when I got everybody together and it fucking had an infinite loop. And I was like, and I go online and people are like, this is the worst written rule book ever. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. But that's a company that had a great deal of time to have one person write the rules, and they couldn't even make sure they didn't have a loop in their fucking 30-page rule book. You could have hired some game testers and said, check for loops. Make sure every answer that we say is in the rule book is there. Fantasy Flight, sorry, you suck. What's your opinion on devs releasing a kind of niche game on nickel and dime method like Train Sim World or other DevTale games? Well, we do the sim games. I love the sim games. Power Wash Sim, Thief Simulator.
They're awesome.
Yeah, Do you jump into any of those?
Yeah, I did Power Sim.
PC Builder, my friend, you did that.
The PC Builder, yeah, you saw me do some ridiculous builds.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I do a few of those, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're some of the best. They're some of the best.
Yeah, I love the
titles.
ones that are a niche idea. Like they're just doing the one thing,
right?
But they do it really well, and it's
yeah. Like PC Builder that's pretty niche. I mean, that's like you run a PC, repair company.
It's a niche within a niche.
Like, yeah. And by the way, does it insanely well. Insanely well. Also, what happened to consumer protection in America? Is that not a thing anymore?
Is it not?
I don't know. I mean, I would say I can return almost anything I buy, which to me is consumer protection in some way, currency protection.
Yeah. I think there are some other elements that extend to contracts and things like that. Like, for example, when you agree to the iTunes set of rules or whatever.
Got to read that shit close.
Yeah. I say iTunes because that was like the first big one that had that, but I haven't used it. Anyway, like there's some limit to what you can actually agree to contractually in those. They can't put in there that you're gonna give away your firstborn.
Right.
You know, there's actually some some limitations. Even if they put that in, that's not legally binding. So people, don't worry. If you said okay to the iTunes terms and conditions, you're probably fine.
Dude, probably. Do you know what stunned me?
I did see the Black Mirror episode where that goes wrong.
Yeah. So here's the thing about also consumers and all this stuff is probably because I've worked at both sides of it, I sort of like, you definitely want consumer protection, but then you also are like, maybe you should just let the consumer sort of off themselves, because I just got a Pop-Tart a couple days ago that said on the outside, do not microwave this with the tinfoil on it. And I'm like, did somebody do that and they were that dumb? And should we just continue to allow them and be like, sorry, that's up to you?
To put that?
Well, yeah, you'll see those and you'll be like, oh, dude.
Yeah, you know, like the bleach cans that say do not ingest. It's like, what do you mean? It says bleach on
yeah. I mean, I get it. It's, you know, a lot of it's child warnings, which I do believe in. Yeah, there's a skull. It's got a skull, warnings, radioactive symbol, and somebody's like, oh, obviously drinkable. Oh, well, obviously that's something I should for sure drink right away instead of the grape juice right next to it. Yeah, no, that is funny though when you think about it. Both sides, it's a crazy time.
Yeah, let's get rid of the warnings in the cans for like a couple years and see who's left, and we'll go from there.
Just don't watch TikTok. Dude, TikTok is the cancer of social media. The cancer. The amount of medical misinformation on TikTok.
And like actually dangerous stuff that people will do just to do a challenge. Like,
oh, dude.
Crazy.
Yeah. To be fair, to be fair, wasn't there a thing with teens eating Tide Pods? First of all, to be fair, I hate it, but you're absolutely right. There was, and it was driven by TikTok.
Every time I've said to be fair, you've scoffed.
Dude, I hate it. But to be fair, that is a real thing. Like I was watching a TikTok a couple weeks ago, and the person was talking about DMP, which I don't know if you know what DMP is. It's a dangerous drug for weight loss. And people were telling each other how to get it, and I was like, "Oh my god, man! Like,
wait, I need to look up what are Tide Pods?
Tide Pods are you put it in the washer or the dishwashing, whatever, and it melts on its own into the cleaner that you need.
Yeah,
and hopefully that'll. Dude, look at me! I look like I've got my own. This, by the way, right now is what you see when you use FXAA in a video game. This is the
PSVR 1.
Or PSVR 1. This is Karak, PSVR 1. Let's get... Oh my god, now it's not fixing.
Oh. It's coming back.
It is. I don't know what's going on with this thing. It's like light lately. Okay, there we go. Let's talk about Starfield.
All right. Let's go.
So...
Has there been any news? Anything that popped up?
There's been a worry that because they don't go to Gamescom, now that they're not going to Gamescom, it means the game isn't ready. There was all this weird stuff that popped up. It doesn't make any sense to me because that's not what they do. It's a little bit like, I don't know if you've seen this. A lot of people would be like, why doesn't GTA show up at the E3 awards at the time or at the games, Game of the Year? They don't do that. And they never have. So for this, I get that they're not, but I saw a lot of people saying there was also no marketing for it, and I've seen marketing for it. So I don't quite know what that means. I'm assuming, I'm going to try to adjust this a little bit. I'm assuming it might have something to do with locations. So that could be it. Also, I don't know. Maybe they're just going to do, a couple weeks prior. Be like, boom, here's all your data about Starfield. But I know people are worried about that. Personally, what I was going to say about Starfield is I think Starfield's going to have the same Baldur's Gate style people trying to do or people wanting to create characters that are vastly different, and I think that that's what's exciting about Starfield is it'll be sort of like the Baldur's Gate of space games where people will go into it and be like, okay, pirate, trader, just do the quest, just do the side quests, bad guy, good guy, there's all these different thought processes. I'm really excited to see like what people end up doing with Starfield. It's going to be also interesting to see the loops people try to tie themselves into because, they're mad that it's exclusive for the Xbox. It's just, I can't wait because I I won't listen to podcasts on it, but I do love the loops people tie themselves into. They get so angry about it. And there's something that's just hilarious because the arguments break down so bad at some point. They're like, this dude's a flat earther of video. Like they're the flat earther of video games. They're so cool.
The gymnastics to like fit
mental
what's
gymnastics
going on into what they are.
Yeah, it's pretty
projecting.
crazy. Sorry, I'm gonna try to adjust this. I don't know. There we go. A little bit better. Whatever. Big Pharma hates. Oh, these guys are talking about Big Pharma. Tide Pod eaters. Warning labels are the best. Never use TikTok. Game owner manual used to say check battery level. Now it tells you to not drink battery. I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. But with Starfield, I think also the mods. So I don't want mods to fix Starfield. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I am excited to see what people try to do with mods. Like we've joked about having Skyrim as a planet. You know, some of the stuff that they can do. I'm really excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, we're gonna go all the way back to like Morrowind. But
yeah, right. Load up Daggerfall on a planet. Just be like, oh shit, it's gonna be awesome. Let's see. Oh, and there was another question. I'm gonna go to Twitter and get these. Let's see if Twitter's just angry again. They were so angry a couple days ago. Man.
Why? What happened?
Dude, so PC Gamer, the website, which I've joked about before, but PC Gamer released this thing that said, hey, I like this game, but I don't think at $60 for 10 hours it might be worth it. And I saw people saying we should never discuss length in a video game as it's worth. And I was like, I don't know where we are now. Game length and game, man, I'm still out of focus. Game length game length and all that does matter. And it matters because it's the same way as in a movie with pacing. So if you have issues with pacing in a movie, you bitch about the movie and you're like, that wasn't the best use of my 2 hours. I'm gonna have to fix this. But I don't know. What do you think about, like, we all take gaming into you all take timing into account, don't you? Like, don't you take, I mean, in some way you're taking it into account, whether it be bloated like an Assassin's Creed. You're talking about it.
Yeah. I don't have a hard line on it. Like, I need to get X hours of entertainment per dollar. And I do think that, in a way, the bigger the game, the better it scales, I want to say, in the way that I can be happy with a game that's 2 hours and $10. That's a bit on the line. But if it's a great 2-hour experience, I'm willing to pay like even 20, maybe even 25 if it's an amazing game for 2 hours. That's very little time comparatively. And in the other extreme, sometimes you pay, let's say, full price and you get a big game, but you stop having fun 10 hours in.
Yeah, right. Front-loaded games are a thing.
You know, is that good value? Is that bad value? Some people feel obligated to then squeeze as many hours out of that game they're no longer enjoying. And then now they've had 40 hours of a shitty time. Is that good value? You know, it's weird, isn't it?
It is, but I think you just proved the point, which is that when we do talk about games, you will always discuss time. You will always discuss it. Even if your discussion is positive or negative, it doesn't matter. You will discuss the time spent. And that's
and
how
quality,
and the quality. Right. And if you go to a movie that's 3 hours and, like, for example, Lord of the Rings, what was it, 3, when Frodo left for 4 hours, you're like, what's Frodo doing? He's still sticking around saying goodbye to everybody. Like, this movie could be cut by a full hour.
On the fourth Sam
on the
sequence,
fourth. Right. They're like, high-fiving and shit. And you're like, dude, seriously, go. If you don't want to go, stay. But what are you doing, Hobbit? We all discuss it. And to see it, what I believe is that it was because it was Ratchet and Clank, and there was a defense force ready to pounce on any negativity towards that game because it is a cherished game, which, by the way, I loved it. So, but I will talk about length. It will always be brought into it. It is not a static painting. The moment something is dynamic, you will discuss time. That is how it works. That is, whether it be a book that's too long or too short, and you wish it had more. It is genuinely the thing you talk about. And it can be brought up as value because art takes time for somebody to make. and costs money for you to buy. My time is money. And that means for anything. If I could spend my time doing something more enjoyable, then I will discuss that, because that is quite literally value. That is how you discuss it. You can still, and what I was saying was, it doesn't change your entire review. It doesn't change your entire preview. And it wouldn't change you telling me if you like the game. But guess what? You would bring it up because that is a cornerstone of what you're talking about. By the way, this used to happen with CDs. I got 12 songs, and then somebody else would release a CD with 24 songs, and you'd be like, I really like this one, but it's only got 12. This one's got 24. That's pretty cool. You're not like Guns N' Roses versus a rapper like Post Malone, but you might talk about it. Those are intrinsic to the actual discussion. What I was seeing was people saying you should never discuss it. Not that it would have no impact or little impact, which I don't think that's actually true. I think if you're going to talk about a front-loaded game, or what about a game that fails the ending, Johnny? What about a game that fails the ending and makes you feel like, hey, this was it just fell apart in the last quarter of the game? You absolutely should say.
Or the pacing is way off.
Or the pacing is way off.
Lots of filler in between the good parts. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a weird conversation, man. It was like one of those things where I was like, I cannot believe. And there's a defense force also that everybody should be nice to developers, which I agree. There's no reason to be mean. But where now it's all artsy fartsy, as the old term would be, pinky up stuff. I actually believe there's no difficulty whatsoever with me talking about amazing audio in Baldur's Gate. But if it was a terrible game, I would say audio's awesome. Game sort of falls apart. That's how you review something. You don't just say, I'm going to arbitrarily remove the amount of time the game takes and how it gets you there and its pacing. I think that's moronic. Go ahead.
Agree. I think one evolution, just to wrap up that point, one evolution that has happened is that devs, I think, have identified that quality of time is actually a more impactful slider than quantity. Because we used to see games that were made bigger, for more formulaically, and we still see it.
Yeah, you're still going to see all games.
Yes, but I do think we sometimes now see a push to say either make it smaller and more
dense,
dense with good stuff, or just expand the quality of time. And that reminds me of what Uber did. I don't know if you use Uber.
No, I don't,
Uber?
but I know about
Uber?
him.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Uber.
Yeah, so the cars, right? The car service. The big thing they did initially, what they were trying to do is reduce the travel time. So get you from A to B faster. Okay. Right? But it turns out that is a very difficult problem. At some point, you can't get faster, right?
Right.
It's diminishing returns. But what you can do is improve the quality of time a great deal. For example, what they do now is they show you where the driver is. So now, instead of waiting X minutes without any idea of where the driver is, if he's even in the right neighborhood, you're now actually seeing him like, oh, okay, he's stuck in the lights. I'm going to go get a beer. Do you know what I mean? It's a different quality of time. And I think that's one thing to me that makes a great deal of difference. 20 hours with high quality, intensive, engaging experience is way higher value to me than 60 hours mid.
Yeah. And the other thing is that the reason why I think it's important is because if they're in the same ballpark of price, you can say this game is bloated, but it's still worth this amount of money, like this amount of money. And I've had people even say that you should never talk about the cost. And I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about, but I buy games. Like, it does cost money. So if I had unlimited money and unlimited time, both those would be removed from reviews, most likely. Or if we all as humans did, but we don't. So you do talk about those. And those two games you just talked about, very good examples would be like Uncharted versus an Assassin's Creed, where they're both at that same price, but you might get Uncharted 4, which I think, if you're just going through the story and you're not really exploring, isn't going to take, 2 days worth of game time. But what if you feel like playing that game one day and you actually feel like playing the more exploratory, just run around game a different day? that's one of the reasons why I love having a review of like a week where I can go, you know, what, like, did my attitude change towards this? Was the exploration fun? Was the gap fun? Death Stranding is a game we all talked about where there's long stretches of like nothing. And then, but the one thing you may do, like you told me about the ladder story, if there's one thing you do that's poignant and matters, then that travel might be worth it. And that's happened with Assassin's Creed, where a world event might be fun enough that the travel there was a journey. And that can be fun. And then another game has no journey. That can also be fun. Dude, we had a game a couple years ago that was just in an apartment. Like the entire game. You're not traveling. You're not doing anything. It was a nice condensed thing. But when we talk about a review or the price, you are going to say, you don't go anywhere. You stay right there. Here's how many hours. Here's the pacing. Is it worth it? And if it's $20, then other games that are $20 are fighting for your $20. And you can spend $40, but you can't play 40 at the same time. You can only play one of those games, one of those 20 hours. You can buy them both, but you can't play them both. And I think that's why the definition of time is important, so people understand where the time will be, the context of what you'll be doing in it. It's just a weird one. It's just, and somebody here is saying Red Dead 2 wasn't too long. I enjoy parts I never saw because it makes me makes my run through feel individual. Yeah, I would say open world games do that a lot. We've talked about a game where it's like, oh, I did this, I went right.
A different slice or like a.
Yeah, very much so. Let's see. Mood is definitely a thing. It took forever for Death Stranding to click. This is Avid Gamer. He says it took forever for Breath of the Wild to click. You also need your mood to be correct. Yeah, it's just very weird discussion. Like, it's starting to come up a lot where I think there's these weird lines being drawn. And I think a lot of it's a little bit of drama where it's like, hey, watch my podcast. We're going to bitch about something. And I get that. We'll bitch. It's a thing. But if it becomes too much, hey, today's podcast is all about this bad thing. Tomorrow's podcast, at some point, you're going to get bad. Like, there's no good. So it's at some point, you sort of need to offset it with some positivity. I've played games. This is Indio. He said abbreviated reviews. He said I played games that were 2 hours long, were amazing, but I just played a game that was 30 minutes long, and I felt that I was ripped off. There you go. There you go.
There's a line, isn't there?
There is.
It might be too short sometimes. What she said.
Chris is asking me if I know the price of Fort Solis. No, but Dave right after that says it's 40. Fort Solis, I'm looking forward to. Have you seen the trailers?
Did they confirm that it's coming out this year?
It is coming out this year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very exciting for that. But yeah,
August 22. I'm seeing. As the date.
Yeah, dude. We got, dude. It's pretty like it's insane, there's some. Man. Yeah, it went from like this small time, and I've got these couple days to do what I want, and then it's just insane. Icehold says, find a game reviewer you agree with on games you played, wait for the review to make a choice, or just buy the game and find out for yourself, block out the other noise. That is true, but don't do that for me, because I bet you $1 million you will disagree at some point. And I also think that's okay. Johnny and I've disagreed, and I didn't say you can't come on the podcast anymore. Like, but we get that a lot.
We disagree on Death Stranding.
Oh, I mean on games, Death Stranding. I just mean like on games or like on a fundamental. I think we all agree, but and if we don't, you're in a different nation than I am. So a lot of our disagreements might be based on location too, where, you know, you guys have VATs and all these weird things where sometimes the price of a game, you've told me before, Reg has too, where a game is a good $10, $15 more than what I paid. That is a real thing. Like, that is something that people need to take into account. I had somebody who was telling me all the games where they are is about $20. I'm assuming he meant like pirated, but I didn't ask him. Turnoff says, hey, Karak and Johnny, do you cry to games?
Pretty rarely. In games, sometimes in movies, I will cry. For example, I watched Interstellar the other day with a friend. I definitely cried a couple times.
That's a movie, though.
That's a movie.
For games, do you remember tearing up?
I'm trying to remember even one.
Even one? Really? For you? I really thought you were a little bit more like emotional in games.
Not really in games. I got emotional.
Final Fantasies?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. A couple Final Fantasy 10. There was a moment. 7 back in the day. There was a moment. I don't know if I actually cried, but yeah. Okay, I'll give you that one.
I would say for games, I've never cried, but I have felt like sad, melancholy. Longest Journey, Dreamfall. I definitely felt melancholy. That game was not a downer, but it was heavy material and I loved the game. So I was just like, oh my god. Mass Effect 1, when Shepard is alive, I was stoked. I was like just completely excited about that. But overall, I would say no. Not really shed a tear. I don't shed a tear on shows either, unless it's something that I don't expect. And it's so weird, but there's one particular scene in a movie that I never expected to be sad because I just don't connect in that way. And it was Forrest Gump, an old movie. But when Tom Hanks asks his girlfriend if the child is like him, and you realize he understands that he is different, and I was like, oh my god. I remember sitting there and going like, oh dude, because you always hope there's a little bit of the inconceivable idea that they don't know, and he had succeeded in all these weird things, and he succeeds even if he doesn't, because he's the type of what they called simple at one point, because he's not really, I don't really think he has anything. I just think maybe lower IQ or something.
And he has a smile on the whole, like a lot of the time. So that makes you think he's unaware of like his situation.
That was one where I was like, oh my God, that is.
Actually, there was one time I got pretty emotional, was playing Shadow of the Colossus. You have a horse in the game.
Yeah.
And there's one point where the horse sacrifices himself for you. And I remember that there's something about, and this is in movies too, when there's an animal that, you know, sacrifices itself or herself for the owner. It's just something about the nobility of the animal, you know, and the purity, the innocence. That,
and the ultimate loyalty of a dog, or
the ultimate sacrifice of a loyal I'm gonna companion. Yeah, it's something I don't really get from people, even if it was like a friend that did the same thing. I likely wouldn't get as emotional, but there's something about the animal that I think makes it.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes it hit harder.
Dowd, $5. ACG or my best reviewer after TB. Really glad you managed to give us a BG3 review in so little time. Well, luckily for me, there's 24 hours in every single day, and I use them all. Even though people get mad about it, I'm just like, dude, if I like a game, I'm not gonna stop playing it.
Yeah. For a game like this, are you gonna circle back and do like a full? Because that was in progress, right? Because you haven't done everything you want to do.
I mean, there's a lot of classes and stuff. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I do want to do a video, but also I sometimes feel that those tacked on videos at the end are just for. I'm not saying other people do this. I'm saying in my brain, I lie to myself and go, I could just tell people, or whatever. I don't know. There's something about it where I feel like I really, I don't think I've ever made a video ever in my life that I didn't stress if it was useful. Where I'm like, is this, so with Baldur's Gate, because it's out, if Baldur's Gate had a week or two, I would probably do another video within a week and be like, okay, I've tested all the classes, blah, blah, blah. But the reason why I did this in progress is because there's just so many classes. There's no way you could say this is a complete review of Baldur's Gate in that time. And that's rare, by the way. You'll see people say that on some games. You'll be like, no, they could do a review in that. But with Baldur's Gate, unless you're skipping audio, then how do you cover audio? And like I said, I had 37 hours of just audio post the early access. So even if you said, even if saves had worked and you were after the early access, you would have to have scrunched 40 hours in. That's very rare. Normally you have more than enough time. This game in particular, though, I don't know how I'm going to handle it. It's a very difficult game because people have it too. People said, when the T-800 sacrificed himself in Terminator 2, you teared up. Yeah, I get that. I do get, but you know why? That's because robotic loyalty to humans, we're easily fooled. And like, he did a good job. I mean, he was just a robot, but you were like, oh man, he was loyal to John Connor. And I get it. Let's see. I thought it was common knowledge that Forrest was on the spectrum, but even in 95, it wasn't a thing. Not only that, but on the spectrum means a spectrum. And some people consider some things on. I mean, I have people who are like, I'm this and this and this and this. And I'm like, are you sure you're just not a normal person who, not normal that they're not normal. But what I'm saying is that, is there a reason to categorize that occasionally while reading a book, you skip the 13th page? That's more of a thing. It's not like your whole life. Because I do know people who have true like ADHD or whatever. And when I see somebody with like heavy ADHD, you look at it and you're like, oh, okay, I get what it is now. But spectrum is wide on purpose, which is fine. Spirit Fair got me. Really bad timing as my sister just passed 2 weeks prior. Ouch.
Oh, damn.
SP3CU. $30 super chat. I've cried on Saints Row because of how bad my favorite series became. Vapor Blood says, miss your walking the walk. Bro, I just did a walking the walk for, well, not just, but I did a walking the walk for Valhalla. I mean, admittedly, it's not like it was yesterday, but
yeah, but those take time too, right? I mean, those are
they're ridiculous
ass videos, man.
Yeah, they're like I was talking to
an insane edit.
I was talking to a journalist, and he was like, "Dude, seriously, those are insane." Because I think I did the Viking one. I was talking about like Viking bear and all this stuff, and it took a long time. Wannabe dev. Johnny wouldn't cry if a friend gave up his life for him. All right, got it. Super chat. 20, yeah, Johnny's like, people, I wouldn't care.
If it was my cat, though. Yeah.
Somebody said, I saw somebody do a review and they said they completed their first playthrough in 50 hours. You could do a playthrough of Baldur's Gate in 50 hours for sure, but I would assume you'd skip audio or you wouldn't invest. See, when I play and review, I'm organic, meaning sometimes the review will be late or I'll have to do something else. But when you're playing a game like Baldur's Gate, if you don't care about the story, you could get through it in 50 by just saying, I'm just going to say the one thing that matters. But for me, I talk to everybody because organically they were interesting. And so to me, if my interest is still there, I'll continue to play it because I feel like that's sort of what, as a review, you sort of need to do. But that's just me. Let's see. Johnny 5, bleeding to death. Yeah, John. Do you mean Short Circuit, Johnny? Johnny 5? Because I don't think he's... Yeah, he is. He is talking about Short Circuit. That was a great movie. Will you be able to review Starfield? I don't know. I mean, I did... the Redfall embargo went, early. Like, there's no... I was talking to somebody about it a couple days ago. I was like, listen, man, if you screw up and you signed an NDA, it's on you. I also tell people you shouldn't bitch if you don't get code. And I see it all the time. People will say that and then 2 minutes later say... oh, well, I didn't get code. And you're like, dude, or dudette, whatever. Sometimes you just don't get code. So, I mean.
Yeah. And if you don't have time enough with the game prior to the launch, it may also just not make sense to do a video on it, right? Sometimes, because I think you rely on like the day one push of like people are interested, people are looking it up.
Yeah, because this is the interest or the usefulness thing, Johnny. Sometimes if a review's, let's say a game's been out for a couple days, I'm like, how useful is my review?
People already know. Like,
yeah. Unless, I will tell you this, if I disagree, then you will see a video. So like if the game comes out and I see people hammering on it for something or whatever, and I'm like looking at it going, genuinely, there might be an issue with coverage, I might do it, but I usually don't agree too much. I mean, I think most people, you'll still get an outlier, a 2 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10 on a 7 out of 10 game. You'll still get 1 or 2 people say this game sucks, even though it's like Tears of the Kingdom or whatever it is. You will get that sometimes. But for the most part, I think people condense into genuinely pretty easy to develop ideas of a game if it's been out for a couple days. Do you get burnout playing video games because it's your job? Fuck no. Dude, I love games. That's one of the reasons why we're not console specific. Like, do you ever, I mean, we read, right? I mean, we do other things. Yeah. But I mean, do you ever get tired of games?
I mean, to me, it's a weird question because, something that's good, we could say like, I don't know, you could name anything you like
music,
sex,
art,
or playing the
books,
guitar.
Sex, yeah.
Like, sure, like there are phases where you're not doing it as much for whatever reason. But no, not really, because there are so many different games. I could see that if I had one game, if I was just playing.
Oh yeah,
like
Ginger
League of
Prime
Legends
covers a lot of Final Fantasy, and
or
sometimes
Final
I'm like,
Fantasy,
ooh.
If
Yeah.
that was, my single focus, I would need breaks for sure.
Gotcha.
But I think that there's just so much different stuff that we play that in and of itself helps.
Also, when you look at a game, even a series, and I'll play them all for review, like Call of Duty. Call of Duty is the missionary of shooters in sex terms. But occasionally you switch it up. Let's go to some doggy style. Let's do some, Dirty Sanchez, whatever you may be doing. But Call of Duty occasionally has that game with a little bit of an edge, or futuristic, if you like futuristic like I do. It may have World War II if you're a World War II fan. So, but it is the missionary. I mean, you really can't look at Call of Duty and say it's anything other than that. Yeah. It might be flashy missionary in a nice hotel room, but really that's what it is. And I would say if I was just doing Call of Duties, at some point I would pull away from it. But I think for games, man, it's just, dude, I'm so excited about games. Like, and that's what's so, Starfield comes out, right? But then Spider-Man 2 comes out. So to me, different style of games, but they're both highly exciting. I cannot wait to play Spider-Man 2. So to me, while I'm playing an open world game, I'm already going like, dude, what's the next like awesome game I might get to play? And when they're bad, sometimes they're fun to review too. Sometimes you're just like, ooh, this game is so bad.
I'm just really
fun.
Curious, man. Like about games when they come out, even if I think I may not like it, very often I want to play it. Mm-hmm. Experience it. Yeah. That gives me another data point and other things to look for in other games. It updates my benchmark for what's good or what's bad.
Yeah. Dude, I think that's the way it is for me. I love games. I mean, like that's why my eyes are wide. I do, man. I love games. I love games. I love video games, board games, D&D. But there's something so exciting about any of those coming new. It's same thing. You and I get excited about books too, or a movie. Yeah. You find a new movie coming out. I'm a little less into movies now. I'm more into shows, but occasionally a movie come out and be like, dude, I got to see that. Like that looks right up my alley. And I don't get tired of movies either.
Let me get some more light in my scene.
Okay.
Please continue.
If the tree falls in the forest, does it make a noise? Yes. And when I die, will Johnny be there laughing at my casket? No, but he won't care. He won't be crying. I think we figured out that with Johnny, he may not be at your casket laughing, but there's a very good chance he'll be at your casket not crying. Answering some real quick Twitter questions. Going to go through these quick. Chronic says, could someone who's never played tabletop D&D pick up enough basics for Baldur's Gate? We've answered that. Yes. And I don't mean we've answered that in a mean way. I'm just saying, yeah, we've answered that, and it's for sure. Steve asked the same question. Is it accessible? Yes. There are some terms that you'll have to sort of understand, but that's like any Final Fantasy game where it's called Final Fantasy, but it's in a different world. JD says, is there a genre you're not a fan of or don't want to play? I would say sports repetitive games. I was asked that this morning too. When you see a UFC or something like that, that's multiple years, I like UFC, so I'm drawn to it regardless of the year. But when you look at NFL, NHL, NBA, a lot of times I just look at the game and I'm like, this is really just a team update. It's not really, they're not changing magically how basketball works. Oliver says, I'm away from my PC at the moment, but I own the early access to the game. Does that mean I have to buy it again? Or you have early access, it's free. I haven't really had much time to sink my teeth into Baldur's Gate. Tried it out a little on Steam Deck. Excellent. Hume says, hey, ACG, how do you handle these months with releases that are slower? It's not slow for me. I mean, it is in the big, whatever, but there's so many games. I still got to cover a couple times I take days off. It's one of the reasons why I'll work on the weekend. I know some people do YouTube Monday through Friday, but if I get a game on Friday, I have no issue scheduling around it. Lazarus says, I just want to say I cannot wait to watch the podcast. As someone who went to school for game design and programming, I really like the podcast because it offers a technical aspect that I don't see in a lot of other gaming podcasts. Man, I want to say how much I appreciate that. You're like the 90th person who said that recently about the reviews or about the podcast. I definitely appreciate it. We'll get shit wrong, by the way. We'll get shit wrong. Hush Al Ghul says, Microsoft had a hard time acquiring Activision because of monopoly concerns. Could you see a time when Microsoft lets Xbox walk away? That is actually a question that's popped up a lot. I don't know who would buy Xbox because Microsoft buying another company is a dramatically different experience than another company buying the Xbox division. Is it possible? Yeah. Do I see it? Not with Game Pass. No, I don't. No, I mean, I don't. Do you? Do you ever see Microsoft selling Xbox to like EA or I mean, like getting out of the video game side of it?
No, not really.
Yeah, I don't.
I wouldn't predict that.
Not after they just bought Activision too. Now that I think about it, because now they're going to be. Now you would have to apply that purchase to also include them, which I don't know what all that's worth, but close to $1 trillion. I just bought my copy of BG3 thanks to your review. Jason Maxwell says it. Hope you enjoy it. Alejandro says, any productivity tips for YouTube or life in general? Go for it, Johnny. What's a productivity tip? What's something that you're like you learned as a kid, or you learn now even, or what have you, that I'm like, oh, or that you're like, whoa, you know, this has saved me some time?
I don't know about saving time, but one thing that helps me is, instead of doing to-do lists, is what I call done lists.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll do is I'll start my day. I have like a little organizer. So each day of the week, I have a little space to write in. And instead of writing up the shit I want to do in the day, I'll write down the stuff I actually do. And what that helps me with is, at the end of the day, I look at that and I see what I did. And that gives me a little like, oh, okay, I got some stuff done, you know. And it also helps me stay accountable and look, you know, okay, what did I actually do throughout the week? Right. Whereas the to-do lists give me a feeling of like paralysis sometimes when there's too much stuff.
Little anxiety sometimes.
A little anxiety, yeah.
Let's see. For me, productivity tip. I wake up at the same time all the time. Weekends, I always wake up either 3:30 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. workout, and then start my day. And then that's, to me, is having the specific time. I'll sleep in if I want, but I just never want to. But I would say that's a big deal. Because
that's rare. I would say.
Well, waking up
having that drive to always wake up early, work out. So is that coming from motivation? Is there something pushing you? Is there a chip on your shoulder? You're trying to prove something to yourself or challenge yourself? What's going on there? Or do you just enjoy it? Like,
probably I would die if I didn't burn off a lot of energy.
So you just have a lot of energy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even here, I have a hard time sitting still and stuff. Like, I've always been that way. So at 3:30, it's a little slower. My brain works a little slower, which is nice for thinking. And it's dark.
Yeah.
Oh, dark 30, man. Nobody's around, and you can do your shit without anybody bothering you. The dogs are still asleep. Even they're like 3:30. My dogs are like, dude, I ain't getting up. Like, my dogs will watch me walk past, and they don't follow me, which is nice.
Can't be bothered.
Less anxiety on my part to make sure they're okay and, you know, they're sleeping. So I would say I love it, man. 3:30 in the morning is incredible to wake up. And then working out, just because my energy is insane. And like, I love the idea of burning off energy, because I would die if I didn't do a lot. It would be really uncomfortable. Let's see. I like Rogerio says I liked Fight Night Champion, one of the best boxing games. Yeah, man, I would love to see a new one. Do you plan on doing any co-op BG3 with the podcast gang? I don't, and it sounds like Johnny's also sort of moved over towards the just wanting to play it on his own. I think when you look at Baldur's Gate 3, there's two types of way to play it. There's like, I want to play my solo, do my specific things, and then there's like, I want to do a D&D video game with other people. I am not right there right now. I'm more of by myself. Like, I want to do my own stuff.
I would definitely do it after an initial playthrough.
Right.
But there's something about my pacing is a fact. I don't feel like I can look around at stuff.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean.
Does that happen?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, I feel bad because I'm being slow, or
right.
I'm now second guessing my decisions and stuff instead of just, playing how I want to play. Yeah, it for a second playthrough, it could be fun. But yeah.
That's a good point. That is a really good point, that when you're looking at these games, especially when you're playing co-op, it depends on everybody's speed of play and what they want to explore. Does somebody want to go to every secret? Somebody else just wants to play to do the action or what have you. And you'll get those friends that get together and they have different paces. So yeah, I totally get that. I actually think that subconsciously, I definitely have an issue where I worry that people will be bored because I'm looking at the texture on a chest. Not a woman's chest, sorry, but a treasure chest. Where I'll just want to make sure. I'll be staring at a treasure chest just going like, oh, wow, that, I love the look of that or whatever. And, somebody else is like, can we shoot something? So let's see. Depends on how Apple wants to. Oh, somebody said Apple would be the only company to buy Microsoft. Yeah, they're pretty big. Pretty big. The D&D video game path takes months because you have to coordinate. Yeah, that's so true, right? Can take, we have an issue just coordinating a review. Like if I give somebody a review, I've given Johnny, Abzy, Reg, all these guys review codes, and just trying to get everybody set up at the same time can be really difficult. Where we're like, these guys are different hours than I am too. Completely different time. What time is it? It's 1 for me.
9 p.m.
9 p.m. And when it's Abzy, he was living in Canada, so I think it was like 3 hours. But now he lives in Saudi Arabia, I think. And it was like a ungodly time.
Yeah.
It was like 3:30 a.m. for him. People are teasing me about saying I look at chests.
It's not that late. I think for him right now would be 11 p.m.
Yeah.
But
well, I guess it's not that late, but it's only 1, and we've only done I can't 2.5 hours. We usually go for 3.5. And that one time you left, dude, you left, and Abzy and I talked for
you keep going.
4 hours and like 30 minutes because we were talking about AI and stuff.
By the way, I apologize about the lighting. My light isn't responding because I reset the
Looks
internet.
pretty good to me.
So this is the best I can do right now.
Dude, you'll see your setup's pretty nice, but you'll see the guys with the immaculate ones where they like got a light blue light and a $7,000 camera. Here I am going out of focus all the time. It's like you get what you get, man.
Good enough for government.
Good enough for government work is such a perfect saying. Yeah, it's like we'll get it done. Just may not be, may not be perfect. You'll be able to drive on the road. It just may not be the least bumpy experience you've had. That's it for the Twitter stuff. So let's talk a little bit about life.
Let's go.
I saw somebody say a couple days ago that they felt that the reason why everybody was tired in 2023 was because quarantine, and it's been 2 years of constant war and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, but I'm not tired. So I started to think going, oh, is it because I lack empathy and all this stuff? And I'm like, I obviously don't, because I do worry about this stuff. I have friends in Ukraine, friends in Russia. So it's like, okay, so that's not why I'm not tired. But I didn't ask you guys, and you weren't here when Abzy and I talked a little bit about this. Do you feel like 2023, you entered into it fatigued mentally from world stuff, or does that kind of stuff affect you? Do games burn you out of it? Do games get you out of it?
No, I have a bit of a special circumstance because I have some health issues, which make it difficult for me to kind of go out and do shit outside freely. So that affects me way more than the pandemic did. And
I see.
I guess I should say I'm lucky because, some people got really affected by the pandemic. But in some small way, I kind of feel like I already had that oppressive problem from before the pandemic that now more people are experiencing. So if anything, I extend sympathy to everybody who is now
absolutely
feeling, a little bit of that, because that's something I deal with, and I definitely try to get out of my comfort zone in small ways, but it's a gradual process and sort of a bit of a journey there for me.
Dude, you hit that on the mark when so I do go out sometimes with people, but admittedly we do a lot of stuff in groups where they come over, we do stuff, or we're going someplace. But it's not like I don't drink, so I don't go to bars. You can go to a bar without drinking, but it's like my friends would then be drinking, and I'm not usually a huge fan of a bunch of drunks being around me. So what I've noticed is I did have sympathy for people, or a communal feeling with people, because they were trapped too. Even though I don't feel trapped, the experience I have was a little bit more secluded than some. So there was this feeling of like, I get it. And when they had issues, it was nice to be like, listen, I've been doing like, you know, I also like to live in the woods. So it's like, all right, so there's some things I can tell you that might help you with like the mental part of it, which can be isolating. And I agree with you.
Let's be honest, the YouTuber job is a bit isolating, isn't it?
It can be, but I'm going to tell you right now, I say it all the time, so it's a broken record, but Fridays are what I live for. The podcast is even, dude, we've done podcasts that haven't been posted and I still had to go, like, you know, because the technical whatever. There's been podcasts I remember for sure when I first started that we were having technical issues and we just sat and talked anyway. It was just like, how many times have we ended a podcast where somebody brings something up? It's like 15. We do a long podcast, so it doesn't happen as much. But when they were like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes we would sit after the podcast and talk. So to me, that's my communal stuff. It can be isolating, but I have friends who are in real life and in the Discord who come over. So it's like, I think some people get it and you can see it sometimes where there's like, and I also don't surround myself with yes people. I mean, we don't always agree. The people in the Discord don't agree. And so there's that nice feeling of somebody will call, even if it's privately, somebody will, you know, if something really goes bad. Somebody will call you on your shit. It's funny you
mentioned that because I found that's really important. I've recently been having a couple times where I was chatting with a friend and she was telling me like, hey, you know, like this wasn't good, or like kind of reflecting about stuff that I did or like ways that I reacted to stuff that wasn't good. And I wouldn't have heard that from a yes man or a yes person.
Right.
So to me, that's value, you know, that in this case she brought, but you guys also do when you call me out on my, you know, on my bullshit. Or I do feel that's really important. And very often people tend to surround themselves with comfort. Whether it's people pleasers or comfort people who they just will avoid conflict, right? And it's not that we have a lot of conflict, but I do feel like we're not afraid to kind of step outside and say, well, you know, that's not making sense to me.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
And even that I think that's the big difference between like, if you know like I know you guys as well as I know some of my real life friends now, because we just all talked about it, you know, everything. So it's like at some point, you may not always even like that somebody said anything, and you don't even have to say, we agree to disagree, which I hate a lot of times. I'm like, agree to disagree doesn't really work for me most of the time. Most of the time, I think when we argue, there's a fundamental difference that's big enough to say there's a difference in what we're seeing. But we just come back the next day and you're like, all right, whatever. You know, I mean, that's another thing too, is I think you're unaccustomed to it. And I've definitely had issues. Matter of fact, just a couple weeks ago, Silver and I were talking, and Silver has that tendency to say something that'll just be like, what are you talking about? And I talked about it later after we got done. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I probably shouldn't. Like that was like, like I did feel like there was an argument for no reason, but I was like, I should have just let it go and been like, whatever. But instead I just kept going, what? Like what? You know, because sometimes you do have that, like I've had it with Cadiz, where he'll say something, I'll be like, what? Or I'll say something and be like, what are you talking about? Like that doesn't even fit in the discussion. But 2 minutes later, you're fine. That should also be allowed. I think also with everybody being on the internet, they want to appear like everything's perfect or it's all drama. There isn't a middle ground. And I've had it with this podcast where people would be like, I had it when we started. People were so mad at us, Johnny. This was pre-you, by the way. People were mad we didn't argue more. And I was so yes, in the podcast. Yeah. And it wasn't about him. It was just during that time. Yeah. Because we rarely argued. But somebody was like, I wish you guys argued more. And I was like, why would you? What?
Is that a thing?
Is that like, I can argue in real life. And I like with real things. But if you like Death Stranding and I don't, I'll certainly tease you and you'll tease me. But it's not an argument. And it just always seems like a weird thing to want drama. But it's a thing when you record your life. One of the reasons why I don't do a lot of personal podcasts, like around my house. I've had people say, oh, you should show your house or you should do a daily vlog. And I've done a couple vlogs when the fires were really bad here where I drove around in my car and did a vlog. That's fine. But I think sometimes people let people in too much. And you get this thing where you're reacting more to the people than you are whatever real life thing is going on. And because you're worried somebody might get mad, or you're worried that somebody doesn't agree with you. And it's like, I see too much of some people's lives lately. Where I'll be like, that's a little too much. I don't think I need to know. Instagram, where you're like, dude, I don't need to know that The Rock and this guy are arguing. Like, it doesn't affect me, and I don't need to know. Like, it's just, sometimes just make a movie and shut the fuck up. But maybe I'm wrong. Somebody was saying, what's your opinion on aspartame? Was declared that it could cause cancer. A lot of my stuff has aspartame in it. I think one thing people don't realize, and I talked about this during the 20-hour discussion about me sitting for 20 hours. I think one thing people don't realize is that many things we imbibe cause cancer. And
so
humans fight it off.
Sweetener?
Yeah. And at extreme amounts, it's a carcinogen. And that's one of the problems, is that humans, as somebody just said on the Lex Friedman podcast, the reason why cancer beats humans a lot of times is humans have a middle game for their age. 0 to 76 years is your average. Cancer plays the short game. It's trying to beat you before you live. Like, it's trying to kill you early. And a lot of the things we imbibe are bad. I saw somebody say, well, sitting's bad for circulation. Yes, it is, but I also do martial arts. Where's the transfer of one thing being more worthwhile than the other? Aspartame is an artificial thing, so therefore there's probably a chance it's not the best to take into the human body.
Yeah, but also, like you said, sure, if you're having extreme amounts of it.
Yeah, right.
There's something else that's wrong there. If you're just mainlining, Fanta Orange 5 times a day.
Or smoking every day, which we know causes cancer. That's another thing. Or drinking, which we know causes liver. It's like, okay, I get it, but like.
Or sugar. It's like the same. Some sugar, not that bad. But the problem is, usually it comes with a lot of fat and extra stuff. Right. So it's not like nobody got, morbidly obese from just eating grapes all day, right? That has some sugar in it.
That'd be rough.
But guess what? If it was ice cream, sure.
one would be much better than the other, right? Like, I like grapes, but the idea
just makes it really easy for you to eat a lot of that, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's a weird trend of people essentially getting off on outrage culture. Yeah, I mean, that's humans, right? I mean, humans sort of a thing. This is my favorite human being podcast. I enjoy podcasts that are highly produced interviews for entertainment. This podcast is human beings talking sense. Well, maybe not all the time.
To some extent.
Yeah. Somebody was saying debate is healthy. I actually don't think debate is healthy. I think debate is debate. And agreeing is agreeing. And I've seen it before. It's like debate. There is no health positivity towards debate.
I've done a bit of a turn on this, and you mentioned this about me sometimes, where I used to be a little bit like debate club.
Right.
Where I kind of had to, we have a disagreement. Okay, let's get to the bottom of it. And, nobody's leaving the table until we got to. And honestly, sometimes it's not worth it, man.
Right. Like grapes.
You were saying sometimes.
Why have a debate about fucking grapes?
like sometimes the topic just doesn't warrant the deep dive you're about to commit to. It's going to sour the whole conversation. We're going to be exhausted at the end of this thing. Maybe we'll get to a grain of truth. But at the end of the day, we probably just have some different values or some different, perception of stuff there. Does it really matter, right? At the end of the day, it's like pick your battles sometimes. Yeah.
I would also say I love, that was what I did when I was in school. I love debate club. I love that stuff. Learning, like in debate
dialectic
club.
And just
and one of the things they'll say is you need to do good debates. One of the first things they'll do is say, what do you agree with? And then they give you the opposite. So like, back then it was a little easier to talk about, let's say, abortion. So if you didn't believe in it, they'd say, okay, now you do. Argue it as well as you can from their side. And then you come into the discussion with the data, which, by the way, is what I was sort of talking about with metagaming RPGs, where if you come into it, I'm going to play a character I don't think I'll like, because you may come into it with a different angle. And the thing is angles are fun, but they don't have to be all the time. And I think right now it seems like a lot of people think every podcast needs to be a debate, or every video does. or every discussion on Twitter. Dude, I've said stuff on Twitter that is so like 2 + 2 = 4, and you'll have, I guarantee within 10 posts, you'll have somebody be like, well, technically, and you're like, oh my God, here we go. You know, you just
Yeah.
primed.
I mean, for some stuff, it's like you say Pop-Tarts are the best food ever. I say, I guess they're fine.
Right, exactly.
That's
exactly.
fine. We can leave
Are
it
we
there.
gonna
don't need to,
argue
like-
for? Yeah.
Yeah.
If I did a favorite food podcast, that discussion would have a place.
Yeah,
I do believe
actually
that.
Never tried Pop-Tarts, for the record. That was just
I get
an
what you're
example.
saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think debating is natural. It happens. Will happen eventually. Exactly, and it will happen.
Yeah.
That you will agree.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Yeah, but the debate is a project you can always back out from at any stage. So as you drill down and down into the debate, there might be a time where you say, I think we can leave it here and we're good. We don't need to keep hammering. You know?
Yeah. This is a good question, man. This is like one of the best questions about a topic we're discussing right now. Old Boy says, how do you all determine between butthurt ego versus actual grievance? It's like put your ego at the door kind of stuff. And it's also, I would say, a lot of it's about the delivery of the argument. If it's like, it depends on the delivery of the argument. You know, sometimes you just say something and you want to move on and somebody's like, well, that can have a different connotation than let's open up the discussion about blah, blah, blah. And then you've sort of said, this is something we'll talk about. Where if you say joysticks suck, you don't need them for flight games, I'd be like, well, that's a discussion we might have on a video game podcast. But ego can definitely come into it because also ego's driven by internal knowledge. That's one thing that does bother me. I just had somebody get mad at me a couple days ago. No, it was yesterday on Twitter. I wrote something and then they responded back on a different Twitter. And I realized on the 4th tweet, they hadn't read the original one. But they were still arguing. I said, dude, you can't be a troll unless you actually know unless you even not even understand, but you read the original thing. Otherwise, you're just green and stupid. Like that is a real thing. That is not ego. Because they were like, oh, it's ego that you're disagreeing. I'm like, no, it's ego. You know, it's me making a point. You didn't even know the actual thing you were talking about. Like you didn't even, and you were responding to it. Like that is weird. It's almost like saying all vegetables are good after I said the world's round. And you're like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? That pops up. But I think ego's real. I mean, ego's driven also, just like I said, by our own internal belief in some one thing. And then it goes from ego, confidence. Confidence and ego are hard to parse. I think sometimes because I
need some, don't you? You need some.
And I've met
ego, confidence.
A lot of the people I know are very confident because they're martial artists or what. It doesn't mean they know they can't lose to somebody, but there's an internal belief that becomes confidence and then can go to outside ego, but it's fake. Like Tyson would say years later, he looked like he wasn't scared, but he was actually scared. So there's that. And you would have those differences between ego and confidence. But I mean, it's all just people too. It's all just filtered through whatever delivery system you get. It's a podcast, in person, that can matter.
Yeah. I think the butthurt ego thing, the thing that occurs to me is when people take themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
And for example, if someone watches me play a game on stream and they go like, bro, you suck at this game. I don't know, Sekiro or Neo, right? Whatever. I die, right? And they're, oh, you suck at this game. One reaction may be a knee jerk, like, no, hang on a second. I've got some achievements here. You know, I beat the game. I've done blah, blah, blah. You got defensive. That to me is a knee jerk, ego butthurt to some extent. Whereas you can not take yourself serious approach. And you can have a laugh at it, you know what? Yeah, I died. I goofed there, right? Let's do it better next time. It's a small difference in reaction, but it just kind of disarms the whole situation when you don't get defensive in the first place. Right?
Yeah, and
escalating.
It's also about how many or how it's delivered and how often it's delivered if somebody's trying to cause an issue, because you can have groups where somebody's argumentative, or even Twitter or Twitch. Sorry, I've been watching Twitch streams where somebody does say you suck and the person will shut them down right away. Be like, maybe I do, but I got platinum on this game twice. So what's sucking mean? And you're like, ha, you look like an idiot for saying that person sucks. So you can shoot back too, but it also depends on a bunch of stuff. And I think it's also transitory. Like, who gives it? I mean,
yeah.
I remember Total Biscuit when he had me on the podcast, and I was like, well, technically, if you want to get super technical, there's very few things in the world that matter less than video game reviews. And I remember Dodger was like, ooh, Total Biscuit's going to not like that. And Total Biscuit didn't say a thing at all. And when we talked about it later, I was like, well, I apologize if that was, because you're a reviewer and I'm a reviewer, but I really mean in the scheme of the world, there's very few things that matter less than a video game review.
Famine,
dude, yeah. And he's
video
like,
game reviews.
And at the time, I could be wrong, but at the time, I believe he knew he was ill. I don't believe the rest of the world did at that time. And I've had cancer as well. So it was like, we did talk about that kind of stuff a couple times. And it was like, both of us were like, no, that's like, he knew where I was coming from. And so there's also the delivery. Sometimes it's internal knowledge. That's why it's always so weird, because a lot of times we just move past it, and yet the world itself doesn't want to move past it. Also, when you write something down, it's different than you and me talking in a podcast, because that's transitory. Like it comes up and then like people are watching the next thing, I think people are too sure of their convictions today. That's why people argue so much. I think there's a push for you to take a side, and yeah. I have a side, and that's taking data, and that'll piss people off too. Man, it's crazy. I'll get people mad that you're just like, I was on I was on that Xbox podcast for a while, and people were so mad that I had the audacity to talk bad about Xbox. And I was like, dude, they have a lot of problems. And the same thing happened with Sony, where I get Sony fans so mad, and I'd be like, what the fuck are you getting? Like, what? They're not saving babies from rivers. Like, you can talk, you can say this one thing sucks. I distanced myself from my cousin because he turned every conversation into a debate. You ever had any friends like that?
No, not quite. No, not that bad. No.
Do you do what I do? I vet my friends after a while. Like, I'm like, is this person gonna agree with the group I bring? Like, are they gonna be combative with the group? And it might be because I've been a DM since I was 7, and you always want to make sure the best D&D group plays together. So, and you don't want a rules lawyer where if no one else is, because that's a disaster. I mean, I've seen entire days be ruined in games where somebody wasn't tracking who was playing. But over time, I just vet my friends, and I'm like, some groups of friends I will invite together, and others, maybe 2 of them, because I know that like it's a mix that won't be combative like fist fights, but will be, where you're like,
so like friction.
Yeah, where you're like, dude, we're trying to play board games. Why are you 2 arguing about abortion or something? You're like, dude, this is a wrong forum for this.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else do we got in the old chat? ACG, is Game Pass bad for the industry? No, but it is also not always good. There we go. Not black and white. I'm absolutely
opinions. And this is something that we always caution people against, is the one-dimensional analysis of complex problems. Very rarely can you describe a complex situation with a one-dimensional answer. Yeah. Like, and someone said something similar before, which I think they were saying, and I'm not saying they are one-dimensional, just like that type of framing is the game bad because of lack of testing? There's no way you could ever generalize an answer like that about all games. Obviously, every case is different. There are many things in there. It's a complex system. It's evolving. It's dynamic. In the same way, like the industry, it doesn't get more dynamic than that, right? So like Game Pass has got some positive, what I identify as some really positive effects it's had. There's some stuff that arguably could become negative in the future if it's taking to an extreme. Yeah. It's overall though, it seems everybody who talks about Game Pass, like actual devs, I think I've always seen positive feedback. Maybe I've seen a couple negative ones that are worried about the future, but people talking about their actual experience in the present or past have been overwhelmingly positive.
I think that's also the thing. You hit it, Johnny, where like, okay, so the PC gamer thing I was talking about on Twitter, where people are like, this is an okay take, but I worry about the future. Well, I worry about the future too. Yeah. The future of everything. I worry about the future of my heart, my health, my wife. 30 years? Are we alive? Like is it a multiverse? I worry about everything. But at some point, you have to be like, am I going to sit here and am I just going to shiver into my anime pillow with absolute fear of life? Fuck that, man. I'm going to go out and I'm going to enjoy the hell out of these games. I'm going to talk bad about the games and ideas I think are bad. But am I going to worry? Am I going to sit up late at night and fucking have high blood pressure because some company released a poorly tested game? No. And if you are, you must have a deeper connection to the entire thing than I do. And I'm okay with saying that is possible, that somebody has a deeper connection. And what's weird is I talk to developers who are like, no, I won't worry about that either. I'm releasing into an ecosystem that is available currently, and it's good currently for this. Could it be bad? Yes. I could also die tomorrow. At some point, living life, I mean, what else are you going to do? Are you just going to sit there? Yeah. And I also worry about this stuff. It's just that I don't get into what we talked about, which is that analysis paralysis of there's a problem everywhere. Like at some point, this is the solution that is currently working. And the thing is we talked about it with prices of games going up. And I talk about it, I bitch all the time, about these goddamn premium versions without a disc. I'm like, dude, I'm paying $80 for more stuff and you're giving me less stuff. That to me is something I can point at right now and go, right now, there's a physical difference between the normal game and the premium game. That's a problem right now. Yep. Like I can say, you need to give me that goddamn disc. Even if it's got 1 kilobyte executable that connects to the net, I still want the disc. Like, goddamn, man, we're paying more for that. But a lot of the stuff is nebulous. We don't know how it's going to turn out. It's a good thought. I think believing death is the end is too simplistic. Well, who cares? When you die, it's not the end. Guess what? You'll be in whatever's next. I mean,
put it this way. You didn't mind all the years you didn't exist prior to being alive.
Exactly.
So you're going to be fine.
Yeah. Thanks for all your hard work. You're an inspo for my work, and thank you for always being true and honest. I know it means a lot to everyone. Thank you very much, Marco. Appreciate it. Why do game companies charge full price for a digital game? Dude, this is a good question because I don't know if you guys just saw, but a couple days ago, one of the devs was saying it was Alan Wake. They said we're doing a digital version because it allows for us to keep the cost of the game down. And I was like, that's going to cause, I wasn't pretending to smoke pot. I was like, ooh, that's going to cause a discussion because that brings up anybody who says we shouldn't pass a little bit of savings on. Because
you know what's funny too? Here, locally in the UK, games are typically cheaper in physical format for consoles than the digital version because the digital version is invariably full price. That doesn't change unless it's on sale. But it's 95% of the time it's lower price on Amazon.
Right. Yeah, that is true. Sometimes it is,
it could be up to like $10 cheaper on Amazon. Not even on a sale. Just like that's the price to market for physical.
That's interesting. Yeah, that is true. That is true here too. Rogerius says, I think it's a healthy view to understand that people have deeper connections with some stuff. Yeah, exactly. Like, I know that a lot of people get mad when we're all talking and I bring up that some things I don't get as emotional about stuff because I was sick when I was a kid, but that does affect you. And so I have a deeper connection to one thing where somebody else may not. So, I mean, we're all different. I went digital as it was cheap. Unsurprisingly, it is now insanely expensive for digital. That is weird. It's a good question.
Is he talking about the digital version of the console,
of games,
like the PS5?
No. He's talking about digital version of the games. Yeah, they were talking about.
So, I thought the person there that says I went digital because it was cheap. I thought maybe they meant the console.
No, they were saying they went digital because at the time it was cheaper for those games, but now it's unsurprisingly, insanely
Okay.
expensive.
Hmm.
That's a good question. Who I want to look. Powder Keg. Powder Keg asked that question.
Yeah,
Good question,
good question.
man. Any other questions anybody's got? What else do we have? What else do we have to talk about? Did I put something else on the list? Because somebody got mad at me a couple days
Yes,
ago.
we
I
did
forgot.
put we put Telltale on the list.
Dude, what can we say, man? Expanse is good.
So it is good. It's a good first episode. They introduce a couple new things in navigation. That's nice. Solid voice acting, a bit more detailed graphics, right?
Yep.
But I think that begs the question, what's the evolution of Telltale? What does it look like when we project into the future, right? What is 5 years from now? What do you think we're getting for a Telltale game? Are we getting like
more interaction?
I guess we already got kind of Detroit Become Human. That was already
True.
really good.
That was
Maybe we're just getting more of that.
And maybe Detroit Become Human is just an extension of Telltale games. Right? So they loop into each other. So yeah. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
The multi-dimensional hypergravity. No, dude,
Crossover?
I think it's awesome because Telltale disappeared. We talked about this prior to the podcast, where it's like such a weird situation when the company dissolves and then comes back as Telltale and delivers a game that looks like a Telltale. It looks better, but it's their kind of game. And by the way, I think The Expanse episode 1, I'm watching The Expanse right now, rewatching it. I'm at episode 4. And it does feel like another episode. And to me, that is exactly what we talked about 4 years ago in the podcast, where I was talking about Eureka or Jericho or Fringe having a side podcast or a side Telltale games.
Yep.
To me, dude, it's exciting. It's like, that's great because those are a particular type of game, but they're a game style I like. I don't know where we see them in the future, though. I think more interaction, and definitely they'll keep upping the graphics. Like,
what would a better interaction look like in your mind?
Yeah, see, so remember in this not in this version, but in The Expanse, a lot of it's just reading, right? You click on an icon and you can read it. What I would like is not just to have a quick time event. I think there's only 2 in that entire game. 2 events. There's the fight, and then I believe at the end, climbing the ladder, right? I would like to see more of those. I would also like to see somehow them do those without being a failure state. So the first fight is not a failure state. You can fail it and continue, and the narrative changes. The second one, I believe, I didn't die, but I believe you can die if you didn't hit that failure state. With the physical, I would like a little bit more physical. I know not everybody likes QTEs in their normal games, but I think in a Telltale game it fits. And I'm okay with, I would like to see more of that in some, I don't know what.
Do you think puzzles are a natural way?
I would love to see puzzles.
Like just more puzzles.
Yeah, I would love to see
more interesting puzzles.
Or what if you had to go to, what if there was a room or something that did have some data and you don't need it, but you can get it by solving a puzzle so you can get across somewhere and look at the data. Sometimes just hitting X to read sucks.
Like, I don't know, you can open a safe. You know, if you do something correctly and you get a hat that now you're wearing all game.
Exactly.
Small things, right?
Small things, yeah. Small things to personalize beyond just those choices. Yeah, that would be awesome, dude.
Give you some agency and a feeling that, like,
it's your character.
You did something that not everybody did, you know, that was a bit outside.
Dude, that's a good idea, like a hat. I love the idea of you playing Expanse and me playing it, and my character has a medal or something I wear that's slightly different.
You got a ring. What happened there? I don't know. So,
yeah, and remember their next one, I believe, is Wolf Among Us or Wolf. Is that what it is? Wolf Among Us.
Wolf Among Us 2, right?
Yeah. I'm excited for that, man. That's going to be awesome to see. Thank you very much. Somebody said happy to see the podcast. Questions for BG3.
Awesome.
I've never played D&D. Same question. Any tips? Oh, no, they're saying tips for a wife who wants to play. Not just that they've not played Baldur's Gate. A wife that... healer positions are always good for newcomers. Not a wife, but anybody who comes in. You can always have them be the support healer, which lets them not worry about combat and lets them feel like they're building things.
That's true.
What else? What's a good...
The fighters are a pretty...
Yeah, fighters are pretty good.
Good starter, because, I mean, you have a a one-track mind, right? You're gonna charge an enemy.
Sharp things.
You're gonna keep their attention.
Live things, turn them to dead things.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. What did you and your friend played? What'd she play? What character did she play?
She was playing a warlock, and she had it mixed with wizard. I think it was a warlock wizard.
Interesting choice. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And
I'm doing warlock. No, sorry, I'm doing wizard. Yeah.
You are doing wizard? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I would also just ask the person what they like. Is there a show they like? Because a lot of people, when we play D&D, they're like, I don't know what to do if you can do everything. And I always say, is there a character in a movie you like that is not going to fuck everything up? And they'll say yes. And I'll be like, just play that character like in this world. And we've had multiple people who played D&D with us be like, oh, that's so much easier. And then you're like, yeah, but you get to choose these decisions that are different in a world that's different. But if you want to play Robin Hood because you know Robin Hood, do that. Because you can then, like, what would that character do in the movie? Well, this was a similar situation, so I'll just do that. And it works really well for analysis. Do you think the Switch, this is Wannabe Dev, do you think the Switch successor will be backwards compatible?
Good question. Who knows, right? With Nintendo?
I don't know. If it is not backwards compatible, dude,
I don't know what we're doing, man. If it's not, what are we doing, guys?
What are we doing with our lives? If it is not backwards compatible, that is the best thing to say is, what are we doing now? Like, what are we doing? Nintendo loves to sell you classic consoles, and I get that. But the Switch, we saw it with all these other systems where the backwards, they love to grief you with all these different purchases. But guys, we're past that, man. How do they compete now also with PC compatible handhelds? So if they release a Switch 2 and it's not backwards compatible, then you have handhelds that can emulate the Switch currently at double the frame rate and 8K, not 4K, 8K. So it's like, what are we doing? What are they going to offer? If they don't offer backwards compatibility, what is Switch 2 going to offer that a person isn't just going to look at a handheld from one of these companies and just say, I'll just do that?
Yeah. But it actually goes, I think, beyond the usual problem of you have some games, some cartridges, and you hope that you can use them in the next console. That's one problem which exists. They have their
proprietary little
format
thing.
Is. That needs to work in the next one. Or, people won't be able to play their games. But now people over all these years have bought a bunch of digital games on the Switch storefront, which is something that wasn't necessarily happening in prior Nintendo systems.
Yeah.
So now a lot of people might have a really big, almost like a Steam library, but on the Nintendo storefront. Third-party titles, that sells all these indies as well. Are we saying we're not going to have access to all these games we've purchased at a higher price already in the Nintendo storefront? That holds no water, right? That would make no sense.
It doesn't, but they sold you a VR you could print yourself, like the Labo shit.
We always have to remind people that they succeeded in selling that.
Yeah, even if they didn't, continue it. I mean, look at PSVR 2. That's gone the way of the wayside. Even their event was like, it's gone. And so even the other companies have tried stuff and and moved on. I just don't know, because the Switch released in a weird spot. It was like, here's a handheld that you can plug into your TV. That's amazing, right? Like that's magical. That's awesome. But that's gone. That's been gone for 6 or 7 years. Like, all the handhelds plug into TVs. All of even the dock is not even a thing anymore.
You say that, but it's still selling like hot cupcakes.
True.
See,
I wish you wouldn't bring up facts like numbers.
Don't
bring up facts. My ego is high. Don't bring up facts like numbers here. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Dude, it's so fucked.
It works, man.
It's not only that it works, dude. This happens with the Pro consoles and the colored consoles that you could buy a sticker. You can buy a sticker and make it look like Spider-Man. And people buy like an entire console for
the PS5 special.
Yeah.
Plate.
So like, yeah. And so a Switch 2, they'll do a fancy color and some special sensor that they'll never use in a game, right? They'll be like, it's got a face sensor so you can put yourself in games. We know it's not happening. They're never going to do that. Like, that's another thing, is what they're going to sell us versus what we're going to use as the majority basic baseline of the system, right? Gyro is great, but it's not used in a lot of handheld games, even on the Windows ones. A lot of people don't. What were you going to say? Go ahead.
No, I just detected some hypocrisy in myself because I'm mocking people for buying the plate, but I actually bought the Starfield controller just because it looked cool. And so I have to own up to that. You
do, but that's not $599. That's $50.
No, it's not. Yeah, true.
Or $409. I don't know what the PlayStation.
It's a more defensible.
Slightly. Yeah. I mean, customization.
Slightly.
Yeah, customization nation is a thing. Like, it used to be the X generation for some systems, and then everything's customizable, which I think is great. Xbox sells. You can make the controller look whatever color you want. That's all awesome. But we also see how much they grief us with, like, the Elite, which is so expensive. The Elite controller is so ridiculous in its cost. Like, it's not even feasible that those fucks charge that much. And
I like the controller, but the price is outrageous.
Dude, it's outrageous. By the way, anybody watching, there is a brand new Hall joystick controller, the new sensor type, that is out for the Xbox. I can't remember the company, but if you look it up on Google and type in Hall Sensors Xbox controller, brand new one released. I know 3 people who have it. They all love it. But it's also only $10 more. And Microsoft would be like, $129.99. $129.99. You get yourself a special Chrome fucking... You could just put a sticker on it. Like, there's... These companies... And Sony does it, I should say. Sony's got their Elite. And the Pro controller for the Nintendo Switch was expensive.
Yeah, and the God of War edition for control. Like, there's all this stuff. By the way, I'm noticing I said hot. No, yeah, I said
sell like
hot
cupcakes. Oh, you said hot cupcakes instead of hot cakes?
Yeah, which is kind of gnarly, like a hot cupcake. It's like melting.
No, here, by the way, I don't know if you've ever, so we used to make muffins. We don't make them much anymore, but you get vanilla ice cream and you get a warm muffin and you crumble it up on top of the vanilla ice cream.
Okay.
So good. Speaking of like aspartame or sugar or whatever, that's just doubling up on it. But
let's go, man.
Yeah, let's get some cancer. I've had it twice. I'll fight it off a third time. Show off that 24K gold necklace, Johnny. Oh, no, that's not even a gold necklace. What? That's a, what is that? A bead?
No, this was from my grandma. It's just some wooden beads. Not like that. Don't you?
She put them together for you. Did she do it, or did she buy it?
No. Sorry, I thought you were gonna make a dirty joke there for a second.
No. The reason why I was bringing it up.
Grandma, so.
No. The reason why I was bringing it up is because when I don't know if you were of this age or your parents taught you, but like when I grew up, my dad was like, okay, manners, sewing, ironing your clothes. There were the very basics you need to know. And one of them was like construction of things. So you need to know how to make a right angle on a piece of wood.
Making a box.
You need to be able to make a box. And by the way, I failed. I made a triangle. I can still show you. I still have the box. It's horrendous.
Terrible box.
Dude, I remember my shop teacher laughing out loud at the creations I made in shop. Like,
how do you end up on a triangle, though?
I don't know. So here's my problem with building. I eye things a lot. And by the way, any builder will be like, you can eye some things, but most things you don't want to eye. And I eyed that box. I also made a football with my initials on it. No lie. I put the wrong initials on there, and it's my name. I put JJ instead of JP, and I still to this day don't know why, but they weren't even sewed into the center. They were sewn like off the side. Dude, I sucked. But you had to learn that. So that's why I was wondering if your grandma had made that for you, because my grandmother and father made stuff for me, and those were presents a lot of times.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see.
It's a romantic lighting that makes it look gold. Oh, I guess it looks bronze or brass to me.
My proper light, because so today it's like cozy.
What else do we got? We're at 3 hours and 8 minutes.
Okay, I have a question for you, Karak.
Let's do this shit.
What is the scariest animal that actually exists? So don't give me, mega shark from Discovery Channel.
A dolphin goat mix. What's the scariest animal?
Scariest that lives nowadays. Is it like those like big squids from the fucking deep sea?
Yeah, it's probably a deep sea thing for sure.
It has to be deep sea, right?
I had a scorpion as a pet and I returned it. Scorpions are pretty scary.
Actually, I heard contradictory things. Maybe you can correct me on this. So I heard that the deeper you go, animals tend to be smaller because of the pressure. But then I've also heard that there are, these like fucking giant squids and octopus and stuff. What's going on there, dude? Have you heard about this?
I think there's a generalization, but I think also like squids get eaten by whales, and so it also has to do with prey predator size. You will see that where prey will change size over years.
Oh.
You'll see it on islands where miniature deer, because they're easier to hide in the grass, and so the younger deer that are smaller live. The smaller gene travels to the next deer, and over time they become smaller because the grass is taller here, or vice versa. There's probably something to be said for that, but I don't know. I do know that we do see a lot of the deep sea stuff, like the big squids that are huge, even though not the kraken kind, but like the long filament squids that are pretty, they're like, somebody be like, oh, that's 15 feet long. It's like, to me, 15 feet is 2.5 me. So it's big. Like that, right? Like it doesn't matter if it's 50 feet. It's like at some point, if something's double your size, you're in its element. Yeah,
right? It's
What the fuck is scary? Dude? Brain eating amoeba.
Some people have
that is
ideas
scary.
here.
Sloth,
piranhas,
Komodo
honey
dragon.
badgers.
Yeah, honey badgers are awesome, but I don't think they're scary. But they are awesome.
I would be aware that they can fuck me up, but it wouldn't be as scary as like a grizzly bear. You know what I mean? Well, would you be scared of a... You've done some outsiding.
Yeah, we hunted.
Have you seen any bears?
Dude, would I be scared of a bear? Yes. Dude, it depends on if it's a black bear or brown bear, but dude, yes. Yeah. I still remember seeing one, and I went and told my dad, and he panicked. And my dad had hunted since... I mean, that dude, like, he would hunt for weeks in, like, in the Cascades and all this kind. And man, he was like, what? Because we were on a 3-wheeler, and it's like, you do understand that bear travel like 40 miles an hour. And you think you're going fast, but if you're going up a hill and a bear will just grab you, they grab elk at full runs. So yeah, if a bear's hungry and if you got between its young, and you would die. Do you know what
the other thing too?
Moose
they're killers,
scare the
man,
fuck out
aren't
of me.
They? Like they kill like
barrel. I mean, they don't attack as much as people think, but
don't they kill even like cubs and stuff sometimes?
Yeah, they'll kill each other's babies and stuff. That's pretty normal in like any of the alpha.
But people, are they like sharks where you kind of have to poke them to?
Yeah, a lot of bear will run. This bear was running, and we didn't have the 3-wheelers running, as in they weren't idling. They were quiet. We were sitting on a plateau.
So they're not just gunning for people?
No. But if you're between a cub and a bear, that mother instinct, like, you will hear horror stories.
A threat.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, that's why it's like, and then you'll hear somebody, and even we've seen podcasts where people are like, listen, you can pretend you're dead. That might work, or they'll just eat you anyway, or they won't care at all.
Well,
like,
we saw how pretending to be dead worked out for Leonardo DiCaprio.
It was. Yeah,
Leonardo
it was.
DiCaprio in, I forget the name of the movie, but he infamously got mauled by a bear.
Remnant. The Remnant.
Was
right?
it?
The Revenant.
Revenant, yeah. And honestly, I don't know how they did that outside of actually being mauled by a bear.
So I watched all the behind the scenes just recently. This is an awesome discussion. They used a pulley.
Dude.
They used a pulley system that pulled him around, and they didn't even know where the bear would be. They just said, pull him around, and then we'll digitalize the bear in later.
Wow, that looked very convincing, man.
Dude, it did. Like,
that was rough to watch.
As somebody who's like seen them, luckily never been attacked. But another thing is, you don't realize how massive they are until somebody shows you like a bear paw that's that big, and you're like, oh, I see. And if you've ever seen a cat mess around with a mouse and they just like slap the mouse around, that'd be you and a bear.
That would be you.
Like, that is almost the size. It's very
What about
close.
Are they called elk? Like the big
elk
from Canada?
No, moose.
No, the moose. Sorry, the giant ones.
And buffalo and Yellowstone are attacking people all the time now. Because you get YouTubers and Instagrammers who are filming and they go up to a bison, and it just happened like 2 weeks ago where somebody got attacked by one of the bison. And it's just like, dude, you do realize that thing is many tons. Like there's nothing ever that indicates you would get out of that alive if it just walked on you, let alone if it was running at you full speed, you know?
Yeah. I guess that's the thing with the moose. It doesn't have an aggressive energy. It's kind of chilling.
No,
isn't
you
it?
hear sometimes where they're sort of mean, but I do know there's the video of the elk running through waist-high snow at full speed like a truck. And I remember watching it going, that is the biggest creature I've ever seen. Because the one thing about moose is they're huge and they're tall.
Can they defend themselves, or are they a big tub of ice cream?
No. They can defend themselves. Yeah, they can. Okay. Yeah, they still have the big, weird horn things. Their heads. Yeah. Indio says those bison just launch people with a head flip. Yeah, there was a video of somebody getting hit and they're flipped into the. You've seen bullfighting where somebody gets doesn't get out of the way, and you see the person look like a rag doll where every body part tries to separate from every other body part.
I've seen Lion King, man. I've seen what bison can do too.
Right. Yeah. We've seen cartoons. We know the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
But we were talking about scariest animals. We never answered it.
Oh,
we just started talking about animals, which is normal for us. What's the scariest animal?
Yeah, I think it's like giant squids. I'm very afraid of deep sea shit because you can't see the bottom. So there's a Cthulhu mythology thing there. Like, fuck, man. It could be anything down there. I don't see the bottom. It's dark. I'm fucked. I can only move slowly.
And your little feet are just dangling like little lures for a big...
God.
So to me, it's probably sharks, though. I mean, I'm not...
Sharks?
I'm not, like, afraid of them, and you hear about them attacking people recently, but yeah, and they don't... There's no fear as in... They normally don't attack, though we're hearing people who look like seals on a surfboard. They will eat you because they think you're a seal. But... you don't ever argue with a shark. Like there's no time to go time out.
No,
let's
there's no reasoning.
There's no debate club with a shark. Like a shark is going to test you, and by testing you, they could probably kill you just because they'll do a test bite. And their version of a test bite is like, well, you're dead. You're bleeding out. I mean, I've seen some.
Is that if they feel threatened?
No, sharks don't. I don't think sharks ever feel threatened, dude. Come on, it's a shark. Like a great white at around 15 feet is probably like, bitch, I ain't afraid of nothing. I'll just check if you're tasty. Like a Pop-Tart. And, what I
had heard is that sharks are pretty chill
until
you like poke them or...
No, most will go away. Most will go away.
Blood.
Oh, well, blood. Yeah. I mean, it's an animal.
Blood, they go crazy.
Yeah. It's an animal. Hippos are incredible. Oh, hippos. Not Kenny. Who just said hippos? Aries said hippos. You're absolutely right. That hippos...
Aren't they slow, though? Doesn't it feel like you could...
There's a video online, Johnny. They not only are fast, they fast underwater running. So they run on the bottom. There's a video of a boat, and a hippo is chasing it. And those guys are trying to outrun it in a boat. And it is the most haunting, because all you see is a wave that looks like an elder god.
And it's jacked.
It's jacked. The hippos are just like, sup, bitch? They're like the old-style Trebulone HGH users of, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger's days of lifters, where they're just... Yeah. Hippos are evil. They're I will say they're persnickety. Yeah, that's the term. They're always a little bit unhappy. It seems like
word of the day material.
Yeah, persnickety. Brown recluse spiders are pretty scary. Yeah, one of my friends has a huge gaping like open spot on his leg from getting bit by a spider.
Oh my god!
I think I heard a story of a guy. Yeah, we won't talk about that. The guy that lived with bears got eaten by him. Yeah, that was really sad. He was called like the bear whisperer, and people were like, "Dude, doesn't matter if you whisper. If that thing's hungry, you're gonna stop talking." And it did. And there's an audio recording of his death. His girlfriend, you can hear his girlfriend screaming and hitting it with a cast iron. They both died.
And that's real. Like
it's real.
That's a real. Yeah,
it's real. It's unfortunate. People who think they can live with animals are, I love it. You got Steve Irwin, who's one of my heroes. Steve Irwin, the Crocodile Man. That guy, crikey, what a stink. I love that guy. But I remember with my friend sitting there going, dude, it doesn't matter if every animal is nice, what have you. He's around these things that can kill him on accident. And that is quite literally how he died, is one of them thought he was coming up, and the manta
You
ray.
just need to get unlucky one time, don't
And
you?
he did.
It's kind of, yeah,
it sucks because they're animals. Like even a dog. I had my dog bite me. I was telling you, most passive dog in the world, but he thought when I turned around and came in the door that I was the guy that was knocking, and he panicked. And it was not at all his. And that's a loyal dog, and he was being loyal by trying to protect a house. And I was just like, oh, thank God it was me and not the mailman. But at the same time, I was like, oh, this guy was just confused. He's just an animal that's like trying to do his best for whatever little slot in life he's been given, you know, and it just turned out bad. Hush Al Ghul says, we'll never look at a hippopotamus the same way. No, man, watch the videos for hippos and you will be, I believe I'm going to change my answer to hippos. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's get weird. Last question. Bigfoot, was it ever a thing, do you think?
Yeah, it's
was
real.
there?
Are you teasing
Don't
me?
just drop that. What are you...
Well, I've talked
What
about
do you
this a
mean
lot of
it's real?
times in our Discord. I saw one. Yeah. And I absolutely 100% believe whatever I saw was not a normal thing. I told, because it was Dopey Joe and I were talking, and I don't talk about it a lot. One of my friends who listens to the podcast saw it as well. Well, there's 7 of us. But whatever it was exactly every single check mark you would ever have for a Bigfoot sighting. The smell, the size, humanoid. Yeah. I don't. And
Damn, dude.
I hunted.
Wild.
This was when I was 17. I had hunted for about 7 years prior. I think the first time I really hunted and went out in the woods with my dad was 10, but we camped since I was 3 or 4. And since that day and prior to that day, I've never seen whatever I saw. And it was exactly every single thing that you've always heard. And I would hear my uncles talk about it because they saw it in Washington on the Pacific coast. And I'm going to be honest, I always was just like, oh, it's a bear. You know, whatever. It's a bear with mange or something like that.
Because when you see it in the heat of the moment, like, what is the difference between...
it looked just like a 9-foot person walking
gorilla.
in the middle of a plateau.
Just a huge
Well, there were
person.
7 of us. I mean, we legitimately went to school and were a little nervous about even telling people because we were so confused.
Yeah, of course.
We ran too. I mean, I booked, and I mean, in the woods, I've never been afraid of anything. That's the only time in my entire life I've ever been like, whatever that is not normal. And that was middle of the day. It was I think it was about 3 or 4 p.m. on a Saturday when we were going to camp that night. We didn't camp, by the way. We went back to camp, and I was like, I'm out. And we camped there about a year later. But I'll be honest, I was tentative about it because whatever it was, even let's say it was a bear with mange, I've never seen something move like the way never in my life. Never in my life have I seen something move like that. It was, imagine the biggest person ever, but not moving ungainly.
But it's like furry, right? It's like
Furry,
a gorilla.
and it stank like I've never ever, and it was like the worst skunk, dirty fish smell. And we had pulled down into the plateau. There were 7 of us on motorbikes, 3-wheelers motorbikes, and we camped there for about 2 years prior. Every weekend we would just go up there, and we smelled it, and I was like, what is this? And no one could figure out what it was. So we went to the reservoir. We went swimming. When we went back up, one of my friends screamed. He was about 100 yards behind me, and I had gone up with 2 other friends, and he screamed. He's like, is that you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because, by the way, this is a place, there were some hunters, but there was not a lot of guns or anything. This was more of a, here's some forest near the town kind of thing. And when we went up to the plateau, I got on the 3-wheeler and I turned around, and my friend Jason was standing there, and he was facing me. And that's when I looked over his shoulder, and I was like, what the? And then Randy, who's passed away, unfortunately, but Randy came up first, and he came up, and Randy just screamed. He's like, what the fuck? And it ran across the field, or it ran across the plateau, and it was the biggest, scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I still, to this day, don't know what it was. So I'll just say that was my sighting. But it was the scariest. I mean, I don't even joke about it because there's not, whatever I saw is like, if it was a sick whatever, it could have killed us because it was that big. But I'm going to tell you, like, I'd seen bear, and that was way taller than, like, let's say, if a bear was standing on its hind legs, you know, have you ever seen them scratch on a tree? They're massive, right? That's not what this looked like. This looked like a person. It was exactly what a person's proportions are. And that's why it was so, I got to admit to you, I think I had a bit of a mental break because I remember going, that can't possibly be what the fuck I'm seeing.
It doesn't add up. What?
Then I just said, bye, Randy. And I left him. And I'm going to be brutally honest. He was mad at me for about 3 years. We've talked about it before prior to him passing away. He was like, dude, that was, and I admit, I panicked. Like, I was just like, I have no clue what, and we had no guns. We didn't care. I mean, you get the joke in America, everybody's got guns. None of us had guns. They were at home, for hunting, but you don't carry them as young people unless you're, in some dangerous area. But yeah, it was the scariest thing I've ever seen. And I still, there's no joke to be made about it because I have no clue what it was. None. But it was haunting. And I remember telling my dad just goes, yep. Like, everybody I knew who was hunters had seen something weird, but most of them could explain it off. But my dad and a couple of my grandpa, his grandpa, they all were like, yep, we've all seen it. And I remember an uncle had seen one cross a road in front of him, and it crossed a road in his headlights. And he was like, yep, that's for sure, like, what the stories are. And then he just turned around and went home and didn't go hunting that morning. He was like, fuck it. I'm not going hunting. I'm not going to be out there with whatever, even if it's just a bear. But yeah, it was scary. I'm sure people are calling me a dumbass in the thing.
Incidentally, Reg and I discovered there's a huge subgenre of literature for housewives that is about Bigfoot sequestering, kidnapping, humping women in the woods. It's a whole subgenre.
Yeah, I don't know. I knew it was going to happen. Karak, your reviews are becoming more and more sus the more you say.
Called out.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I don't even talk about it enough or much because like
it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
how
here's
you
another one.
describe it.
Good
It's
mushrooms,
always,
Karak. It's like, as somebody who's never done drugs, you always get that. But yeah, it was. I mean, people should realize by the way I'm talking that it's obviously serious. It was. Yeah. I mean, I'll just say this. It was as serious as the day I was told I had cancer when I was. That's how scared I was. Like legitimately terrified by whatever it was. It was
scared to death.
Yeah, scared to death. I mean, dude, we panicked. Like, and we're not grown men, we were 17, but like at the time I was pushing 300. I was doing powerlifting all the time. Like, I mean, I had confidence in my own physicality, and I was like, there's no fucking, whatever is going on is like, yeah. And you just panic. And you hear it sometimes when you talk to people who see something violent. You'll hear about it in war. You'll hear about it in car wrecks. I've been in a car wreck before where there's a little bit of shock, and I'm sure that's what we were in. Like, we were definitely in a panic. A cocaine bear. God, I wish. What about Loch Ness? I don't know anything about the Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
I would assume there's probably some things swimming around that are scary, right? Like, there's got to be, because they catch the coelacanth. You know what that is, right? The ancient fish they thought was extinct for 3 million years, and they've been catching them now. Like, they're like, this has been gone, and suddenly, I'm not saying a T-Rex will come out of the woods, but it seems like in the water, there's probably a good number of things that, like, we just haven't, just by sheer luck, we haven't run into. I don't know if it'll be huge, but hunters usually are pretty chill with their weird stuff. Yeah, I would say that. I would say every time I talk to anybody, every hunter who's seen it is just like, Admantium Movie says people have been serious about many things. Does that mean they're true? Well, I'm telling you what I said was fucking true. Don't even think for a second I'm not saying it was for sure that. I'm saying what I saw was true. I mean, there were 7 people who saw it. It's not like we made it up. Have you ever seen anything like a UFO? Ghost?
No, not really.
Did I tell you the story about my dead grandmother calling me?
No.
So, this is the weird great-grandmother. My grandpa passed away. And when he passed away, I was at home with my brother, and we were playing video games. My mom called. She said, unfortunately, grandfather passed away. And I was somewhat close to him. Not super close, but somewhat. About an hour later, and I've told this before when I was talking to Absy, but about an hour later, I got a phone call. And or it was an aunt, actually. But when I got the phone call, I was like, hello. And they were like, is your mom there? I said, no. And she said, don't worry, your grandma will be fine. And I said, okay, because I knew my grandmother was still alive and my grandpa died. So I said, okay, who's calling? She said, it's your Aunt Evelyn. So I hung up. Mom and grandma come home, and I tell them, my grandma slaps me. She's like, she's been dead for like multiple years, and there's nobody named Evelyn. And I didn't know an Evelyn. So I have no clue what happened. But it was one of the weirdest things ever, because she never hit us, ever. Like she did, like she absolutely was in a panic. She's like, whack. I was like, what? And she's like, I don't know if she thought I was lying or it was just, and it was emotional because had just lost her husband. But it was one of those times where I still to this day am like, what was that about? And my brother was there. I mean, he was like, no. Jeremy got off the phone, hung it up. And my brother didn't know her either. So when my brother said, who was it? I said, oh, it's Evelyn. We need to tell my mom and grandma when they get home. And that was
dude,
like,
I'm about to go Joe Rogan on you.
yeah, it was weird, man. It was weird. Yeah, when I was talking, and my mom doesn't talk about it much, but my grandma did prior to her passing away. We talked about it once or twice. My grandmother believed in that stuff. I don't. Well, you know, who knows? Energy doesn't go away, they say. But it's like, it could have been a mistake. It could have been something, but it was weird that it's a weird name. Evelyn is not a name that like I hear a lot.
I guess it could have been a prank, but it's fucking weird. How would they?
It could have been a prank, or what if I said who's calling? And they said like, what if I didn't hear? And because I do always question weird stuff. So I even as a kid, once this all happened, I was like, oh, maybe the person said it's your Aunt Evelyn's sister or something. But what was weird is my grandmother and mom tried to cover that, and there was nobody who called. And that's another thing. No one ever admitted calling. No one ever. And my mom said I was the first one she called. So it's like no one knew my grandpa died. So it was just, yeah, it was a weird situation. I don't know to this day.
Damn, dude. Okay, there is one thing that sometimes makes me question metaphysics and like what is going on. And it's deja vu. Do you have sometimes?
Yeah, but they usually
strong sensation that you've lived this precise moment in some variation.
And you've had it?
Yes. I've had several times where I had a clear feeling that I've already had this conversation. And like these words
have come out of your mouth?
You know, come out of my mouth and of this person's mouth.
So I don't know what
is that?
That is.
Is that glitch?
I know.
Yeah.
So scientists are saying that it's just the chemicals in your brain are a little later than they should be, and so the brain is a little confused. But here's an experience I had that is not deja vu. It was knowing what was going to happen and actually changing it, which I thought was weird. So we were sparring one day, and I walked in, and I felt deja vu when I walked in, but I'd walked in 100 times. So your brain's just like, that's familiarity. But then I got in a fight and actually knew what the guy was going to throw. And I still, to this day, am like, never sparred that guy before. First time in the class. How the fuck did I know exactly what he was going to do? And it was weird because it was at the time deja vu was happening. So I was like, oh, that was like precognition for a moment. You know, it wasn't a long period of time. It was like just for a moment. But I remember going like, whoa, I knew it like, what the hell's going on? And it went for about 3 or 4 moves. And I remember even later, the guy was like, dude, you're fast. And I was like, that might have been like supernaturally fast. Like that was weird. That was like spider sense. But it went away after. I mean, my assumption is deja vu is just chemicals in your brain. Because DMT causes people to feel familiarity. They see like alien, you know, visions and stuff. But now they're basically proving that a lot of that is pretty much what happens when you die. And that it's like a brain release of chemicals.
And some of the DMT stuff is organically in your brain, right?
Correct, yeah. Your blood destroys it quick. And so what DMT does is flushes you, and it's only there for a small amount of time. But you hear stories about that, and a lot of people talk about deja vu in that way. I would assume a lot of this stuff. For example, what if all 7 of us, when we were in the woods, had what's the term, massive, like, I don't know what you'd call it, but, you know, mass hallucination, which you do hear about.
Yeah.
You know, you never know. Let's see. What else do we got here before we wrap up? Some people saying they saw UFOs. I've seen a UFO or something that was bright light. Yeah, we saw a couple. I don't really know what they are, though. When it comes to UFOs, I assume that a lot of it's technology, right? From, you know, a lot of it's drones. So. Not all of it, but I'm saying you see some of that stuff and you're like, that.
Yeah, because a lot of modern planes, if you saw them, you would think they are UFOs if you're not familiar, because there's some wacky stuff.
I don't know if you remember, but like circular UFOs, like the McMinnville footage, which is from Oregon, they still to this day are like, that's real. Like even scientists, AI has looked at the pictures like, whatever that is, that's. But what's weird is triangular UFOs started being reported right around after the initial flights of the stealth fighter. So there is the idea that a mass, like somebody sees it, and then from that point on, you just sort of see the shape because you're told somebody else saw it, and it might be something different, but also it could be test flights, different planes.
It could. You know, the thing that I'm almost all the way there with, like, I think there are aliens, because I think it's likely based on the number of stars in the universe and all this. I think it's likely. I think that our planet seems interesting for them to explore. All this stuff. I'm like almost there, right? With people who really look at this stuff. But what gets me is, why are the pictures shit? As the years have progressed, we have way better phones. People have amazing cameras in their pockets. The pictures are still shit. And you have this interstellar technology that makes all the way across the galaxy, only to fail in the last mile of the trip and, like, you know, fall down into
it's like your car breaking down at your...
You made it all the way. What's happening? Okay,
well, so happenstance, especially when you look at, like, UFOs and all the stuff that goes around, I do believe that, especially when you look at time and how many planets and stuff like that, one of the things that people don't realize is, like, extinction level events on Earth happened many times. It is possible another planet didn't have those. So you hear some people say, oh, well, there's not enough planets in this amount of age for things to travel here already. Like, these are the technology levels they'd be at, or we don't see rate. And it's like, well, if they didn't have 7 extinction level events, then maybe they did have 1 billion years more than we did.
Yeah, or life evolved differently.
But let me tell you about weird chances. An unbelievable chance that to this day I still laugh at. We used to go tent. It's a tent trailer. It's an old camper. They look like boxes. You'd park it at a campground, and you would wind a winder, and it would turn into a massive tent on wheels. And they're called tent trailers. They don't exist anymore that I know of. But it allowed for you to pull something behind a car that you could still camp in, right? Like, not a big trailer. So we decide to go camping with our friends who own the feed and seed store in our town. We are driving down the hill to go to a different place. The camper comes off the hitch. My mom forgot to put the safety chains on, and it smashed into their truck that they were getting ready to go camping on the middle of a town, completely unconnected. And the odds of that are like 1 billion to 1. Like, why would their truck be there? Why would it come off right at that spot and it hit their truck as it was getting prepared for the camping trip? So it's like weird things can happen too that appear to be
definitely
one thing, and they can turn out to just be like weather effects. We see orb lightning that people for years thought was spirits, and now you look at orb lightning and you're like, oh, I get it. You know, there's
because
stuff in the
any
atmosphere.
of those things happening, you wouldn't really notice them, but it's kind of like the...
What if UFOs are just really blurry? Like, what if we find out that when one lands, it's just blurry, and you're like, it's interdimensional, so it's like vibrating.
It's not that the pictures are bad.
It's not that you got your brand new, like, wide angle, deep angle, triple cell phone camera, and you're like, the fuck? This is still blurry.
Why is it grainy?
Why is it all grainy? And then they get out and they're like shaking as well. And you're like, oh, by the way, you'll see that in some horror movies, a creature shaking really fast. Like, it's sort of a way to show you something scary. But what if they get out and they're shaking too? And you're like, well, that's going to explain the last 100 years. Like, there you go. That's why they always look like shit. Hush Al Ghul says, find it interesting how Native Americans had shapeshifter stories. And my father-in-law, who grew up in Romania, said he heard stories about shapeshifters. Do you know the stories about shapeshifters? A lot of them also caused by the idea of people going homicidal, and humans weren't able, like, they didn't want to say Joe lost his mind.
They would just call it a monster, or they would say, oh, they just turned into a monster.
I'm not saying all of them are that. I'm just saying when you track it, it is interesting that a lot, like, for example, the Salem witch trials, which now they're saying was ergot poisoning and people were just nuts. I also believe there's a good chance it was a bunch of shitty kids. Like, we see that now where you hear, like, school kids killing somebody or whatever. It's like, how do we know that in some small village, a couple kids didn't get together and say, let's run this place? Let's say all the people in charge are, like, we know, witches are a thing right now. Humans are pretty shitty. Like that's another thing. We always think, oh, it can't be that. It has to be poison. It's like, what if they're just ass kids, man? What if they're terrible? 6 months ago, before I got in a car accident, I had a dream that I was in a car accident. When I was in the real accident, I remember feeling this deep sense of deja vu. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. You've never had anything, though? Never seen anything? Never?
No. Nothing weird like that.
I think a lot of it's probably science, too. Like I said, like, not all, you get some videos and you're like, what the hell is that? But I'm saying a lot of the older sightings, like we said, orb lightning and weird weather effects. And
yeah. And also, we like finding explanations for stuff. And when there isn't like a clear explanation, very often we also create an explanation that makes sense to us.
Yeah.
Whether that's based on things we know from culture, and sometimes, we pull from legend, not to discount on anything anybody has seen.
No, that's why I'm always of the opinion.
People
go ahead.
Try to fit stuff into
categories,
holes that they have. Categories, yeah.
Well, that's why I saw what I saw, but I don't hop on the bandwagon of talking about these things a lot.
It's hard to categorize. What the fuck?
Yeah, and I'm a big believer. So one thing you learn about, like, and you would know this because you have a medical condition, but as somebody who had one, you will hear a lot of times that a medication causes, like, you'll hear a story about medication causes, like, mass depression, right? And a lot of us who don't get depression often, it can be difficult to, like, how could a medication cause, like, if you knew your life was good, how do you get it? Well, we know people do, right? It's absolutely possible for somebody to have depression alone or from a medication, or life just causes it. I also believe that, you see ones where people are like, yeah, this drug causes hallucinations, what have you. When you grow up around medical conditions and stuff like that, I think it's a little easier for me to be scientific and say it might also just be a chemical in my brain was fucked up. Like, just because I don't smoke or drink doesn't mean, and again, it was 7 people for my situation, but at the same time, it's like, I'm a big believer in, like, 99.999% of it is based on chemical and brain screw ups. And then the 1%, that's when you start, like, so I almost believe 1% of the 1% of the 1% that we see is the stuff I'm interested in. I'm like, somebody will say, we can't explain 1%. And I'll be like, that means nothing.
There's a nugget there.
Yeah, it's like, you can't explain the 1%. That doesn't mean unexplainable means a real thing. But if you then take just 1% of the 1%, you still have like 10,000 sightings of, like, let's say,
and
UFOs.
I like that sense of mystery, that there is a nugget.
Oh, for sure.
We can explain everything all the way, but there is a nugget there of, like, interest and mystery, and it's like, okay, what the hell was that? I do like that sort of stuff. Yeah,
well, I think it keeps life alive. When I do think that sometimes when people get too, I've met kids who were sick and they get too scientific, if that makes sense. They lose their childhood. So I had friends who were really ill when I was young. They lose the wonder because everything's clinical, right? Everything's is almost, it's like, well, this chemical will heal this, or it could possibly cause, and after a while, the mystery goes away because it's all been so drilled out of them. Everything is explained in some number or what have you, and they lose a little sense of that mystery. But I got to tell you, some of the most amazing people I know are people who were sick when they were kids, where, like, one of my friends was sick when he was a child, and he was really ill, and he was ill for years. And over time, I guess you would just say, it's sort of just left. But that dude is a go-getter. He makes me look really, really late waking up and late going to sleep. Man, that guy is, and I remember one time talking to him, I was like, dude, like, what? Because if people think I don't sleep a lot or I have energy, this guy is fucking revolting. It's unbelievable. It's like a battery that, I'll talk people to sleep at like 4 a.m. That guy would be 4 a.m. the next morning, and he'd still be talking about the wonders of the world. And I remember one time asking him, he's like, he had no clue why. He's just like, his brain is legit. What's the guy that we read the book from? The runner? We just read his self-help book. Goggins?
Goggins? Yeah.
Even though Goggins out-physicalizes this guy, I bet you this guy would exhaust Goggins. Because he exhausted us on a weekend for 4 days, where I was like, dude, I'm gonna try to exhaust this bitch. So it was like, let's go for a run, 7 miles. Let's fucking go swimming. Blah blah blah. Multiple things in a row. And that guy would blabber while we were swimming. Like we were swimming. He's like, so anyway, about UFOs, blah blah blah. And you're like, dude, shut the.
And you're like
up.
choking on your.
Yeah,
chest,
you're choking on water and stuff. And he got out, and it was just like triathlon, but didn't like eat a ton. I mean, he eats, but he's not one of those guys shoving, getting calories. I used to joke and say he is a conduit for a other force that has come through, and he's that way with people too. And by the way, hey, if you're out there, buddy, smoking wife. Like he's just like he's got it going on. And he is like, when you get around him, you're like, dude, if you told me to run into saw blades, I would think about it. Like he is back. And he, by the way, one of the nicest people I ever met. He never misuses it, but he's also a charismatic. Like you're around him and I'm just like, dude, tell me about flowers. And he can talk to you and you'd be like, that's interesting as fuck, man. Yeah. Awesome guy. One of the best, like when he passes away, it will be a true loss. Like he's one of the guys that every time I talk to somebody, they're like, so my grandmother needed like a cord of wood, blah, blah, blah. And he was out here at 5 a.m. chopping a cord of wood. And then that night he went and like repaired the house. And then he went and, gave money to a, donation center. And I'm just like, okay, seriously?
Saved a life on
Can
the
you
way.
calm? Yeah. Doing CPR with an elbow while he's fucking chopping wood. And at some point I'm like, can you slow down so the rest of us can
just
do
having
something
some fucking
good?
piano lessons while he drives.
Yeah. That's one thing. Artistically, sucks balls. I saw him try to draw one time and I was like, haha! I'm better than you.
Making us feel better here.
Yeah. As we wrap this up, what else we got here? Anything else? What time? Oh, dude, we've gone a long time. I'll let you go. What time is it for you? It's 11?
10:15.
10:15. Okay. What else we got here? People talking about UFOs. I'm sure people tease me. Favorite current UFC fighter to watch? I don't think I have a favorite right now. My heyday was in the big days of like George St. Pierre and Chuck Liddell and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. Science is the search for fact, but I understand you can get even more meta than that with a lot of philosophies. Oh, these guys are all talking to each other. That'll be it for us. Appreciate it. Anything else? What are you streaming tomorrow?
That's good. I'm finishing Final Fantasy 16 tomorrow on stream.
Wait, how do you know you're finishing it?
Because when you know. It's got that stink of,
That stink of the last 2 hours where things are wrapping up and you can like feel it wrapping up.
You know when you're digging in a can of tuna? Because we buy tuna in cans.
So do we.
And you can kind of taste the end of the tuna can.
Or a blizzard when the ice cream is like at the top, but at the bottom is the best parts. Like all of the mixed candy bar and stuff. Dude, we always joke that
it's
like
condensed at the bottom, dude.
And I'm like, why does Dairy Queen not make a blizzard of just that? Like, what the fuck? Why don't you have the entire blizzard? Dude, I love that.
The Skittles?
Yeah. Oh, dude, I love
the Skittle candy. I love the red ones.
Oh, do you?
Normal. Not even, I like the sour ones. Sour ones are the best.
Yeah, they're delicious.
But in the basic Skittles, the red ones are fucking amazing. Now, why can't I buy a fucking pack of red Skittles?
I don't get it.
Tell me.
I don't get it. I swear to God, they know that. They know that, and they know that like people would just want red or something.
They know I will get.
Dude, they canceled my favorite Jolly
Skittles.
Rancher. They canceled it. It's lemon. And they stopped. We just looked up a couple days ago. They literally just were like, we're not making lemon. It's probably cancer causing or whatever. I don't know. But it was like my favorite Jolly Rancher of all the flavors is lemon. It would be that bitter sweet. So good. What else do we got? Skittles apparently changes your DNA. I think everything does. I'm happy for it. Give me more changing of the DNA. People are talking about different stuff. Okay, that'll be it for us. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you stopping by, listening to the podcast. I hope it was some way enjoyable. Thanks for the super chats, everybody. Those obviously help the channel continue going. You will see reviews from me. What do we got? Atlas
Can you
Fallen.
Say what the next one is?
Yeah, Atlas Fallen's coming up. Gambit, the Shadow Gambit, the one I previewed, the Pirate Desperados. Ooh. The preview was so good. So good. Yeah. So that's coming up, and then some random other videos.